Make that this perfect. Right. Okay. Lots happened overnight. Obviously, Fulham have changed managers. That's the first sacking in the Premier League, the first managerial change in the Premier League. Um, was not expecting that. Was not expecting that, considering that after the weekend's defeat, Jokanovic said, "I've had talks." Blah, 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 blah. Fulham came out and said, "Yeah, we're not planning to. We're backing him." It's normally a sign they're going to sack. I have my concerns about Saheed Khan's ownership. There are allegations of corruption in that ownership that they have at Fulham. The collapse of the bid for Wembley's cost him a lot of money. He spent a lot of money in the summer. I'm not sure if Ranieri is going to get the funds available in January to make changes. And I do think with 6 weeks out from the transfer window opening, that could be a lot of struggle ahead for Fulham. I think Ranieri, good manager though he is, I don't know if the pieces are there to make an automatic turnaround right now. Fulham need to take that step out of the relegation zone and be competitive in the Premier League because defensively that is a sieve. I don't know what was given to Jukanovic as instructions in the summer for purchasing of players. Obviously, he's been told, play a certain style of football, have this philosophy. Defence was obviously not a priority for Fulham. They're starting to slip behind further from other teams around them. The goal difference is a killer. It's going to take a long time to get that goal difference clawed back to respectable. Could prove crucial at the end of the season, the amount of goals against that they have, which is a lot. So we're going to have to see what happens there. On the rugby union side, we've got the next batch of internationals coming up. England's playing Japan, which is, I think, a really interesting matchup. I know, obviously, Japan have the World Cup next year. That's going to be really interesting to see how both sides set up. I think Japan will go for a full-strength side. England may make a lot of changes. The weather may have an effect, but what key areas I'm looking for England is discipline and the breakdown. Two areas where England will be poor for too long, and the Japanese will have fun moving that England side around. They proved against Africa, against a bigger, more physical side, that they can beat them. They proved against Wales, a tier one nation, they can beat them. Do not underestimate this Japanese side. I think the English may be doing that. And I think Eddie Jones may be doing that at his peril. So that's going to be really interesting to see how that all plays out over the weekend. Rugby League Test Series and the comments about the Golden Boot from Australians about who this making some player is. Fact, if the Aussies are claiming they haven't seen him, then they're not doing their scouting because Wayne Bennett is an Australian coach. It shows a complete lack of respect for the Super League. Yes, I understand that the NRL is possibly the better league. The NRL players do play state of origin, which the English players don't. So there is a question mark about how they go around selecting the Rugby League Golden Boot winner. It's like the football Ballon d'Or, really. There is a question mark about the selection processes in place to select who, as a player, would get that Golden Boot. I think Mason's deserved it for the efforts he's put in it, and especially coming back from such a hideous leg injury and basically 2 years out of the game with injury. I think, yeah, he does deserve it. But what parameters do the Rugby League use to select a Golden Boot for the best player of the last 12 months? Like, what parameters are actually used? That's something that needs to be clarified. Like, what are they looking for, etc., etc. England's defeat to New Zealand, I haven't done a video on it because I wasn't actually at home, but 34 points to nil was actually a little bit embarrassing. I think England looked very, very tired. I think the previous 2 matches they put so much energy and so much effort in, they looked exhausted. Plus, the Super League season and the Super League based players play more games because they play in the Challenge Cup as well. So I think the extra amount of games on the body, as it started to tell, they looked exceptionally tired by the end. You could tell that they were flagging in that Test match. They just looked low on energy levels, really tired. They were probably carrying an injury here or there, and that suited the Kiwis having that slight advantage with the fact that the English were starting to look physically worn out. It does pose a question for Wayne Bennett getting that consistency up the England side. They were trying to go for an unbeaten year. They haven't done that for a long time. They were trying to go for a series whitewash. They haven't done that, I think, ever, if not for a long time. Consistency is a key point. And I think Super League needs to raise its game with the quality level. And there's various ways Super League can do that, but for some reason they don't want to. So we have to look at, ways that the Super League can close the gap on the NRL. There are ways they can do it. They can look at it, but money is an issue. Money and sponsorship is a problem. Crowd numbers are a problem. We saw in all 3 Test matches a lot of empty seats. So we've got to look at what is causing rugby league to be left behind by other sports in growth in the UK and quality level in the UK. Yes, the Super League is a very, very good competition, but we have to look at why the Super League is lagging somewhat behind the NRL in a comparable league, whereas we're looking at other sports and how the sport is developing well and growing well in other sports, not rugby league. So we'll have to look at why that is. So away from that, obviously the NHL is still going. There's rumours of a European planned expansion. We've heard these rumours from other sports franchise-based leagues in North America. But last year, the NBA Boston Celtics CEO was asked this question about a European-based franchise or a North American major league sport league, and he said it's off the cards. It's just not feasible. So I don't understand why they keep trying to push this proposed expansion into Europe with the NFL and the NHL. I don't understand why. Financially, it's going to be an interesting, all different currencies. The rink sizes are all different. The style of play is different. Even European fans don't want it. So if they don't want it, they're not going to buy it. Plain and simple. It will actually affect the European leagues a hell of a lot by devaluing them straight up. It would damage the European game, which has been growing well. It's the second most popular sport in Europe. It would be damaging for the European game. Is there enough players in Europe? Is there enough fans in Europe to warrant moving teams over here or expanding the game over here? Probably not. They have their own leagues to support, their own teams to support. It would be ultimately damaging. But we'll see what happens. That could be on the table for the collective bargaining agreement if there is a plan of expansion to Europe. Another thing that will be on the table is Seattle when they join. They're saying they're going to be ready in 2 years' time. The league is expected to be ready in 3 years' time. This could scupper a planned action by players or owners on a lockout. So we'll see what happens with Seattle. But they're planning to come in earlier than expected, which is actually positive signs. Key Arena's refurb is coming along very, very well. So they could enter the league a lot sooner than people expect. Will they have the same advantages as Vegas? Yes. The expansion rules are exactly the same for Seattle. So we could see them have a very good side off the bat. What we've seen with Vegas in the second year is what was expected in the first year. So I can see Seattle being very competitive. Maybe not as good as Vegas in the first year, but I can see that being a positive for the NHL, positive for the city of Seattle, and positive for the sport as a whole. We've back to football. We've seen a lot of sackings over the weekend. It's obviously FA Cup first round weekend has come and gone. We've seen some sackings already. We've seen some surprises with league clubs crashing out to non-league clubs. We've seen managerial turnover in the lower leagues. We're now seeing it in the Premier League. So, is this the rock that starts an avalanche or a rock slide of managerial replacements? There are several managers in the Premier League that are clearly under a lot of pressure. We could see massive managerial overhauls before the end of the season. Mourinho could be one, Warnock, Hughes. We could see Wagner at Huddersfield. I don't think he goes though, but it's a possibility. We could see Rafa Benitez. Hello. So we could see a lot of managerial we could see massive managerial turnover before the end of the season in the Premier League. So we could see that happen. Does this mean that it happens overnight? No, because Ranieri was already out of work. He was available. Fulham had to go for the first available manager. I wouldn't be surprised if this was being lined up a couple of weeks in advance before Fulham were on. Now it's going to be interesting to see if City can't spend the money in January. So we'll have to see on that one. Hello, Storm. What questions do you have? Please place them in the comments section. If you are a sports fan, I would like to hear what your questions are and what sports you like, because then I can debate with you what's good and bad and what we can discuss. And it's always good to see a new face in the comment section. So it's always good to see that. So get your questions ready and I'll do my best to answer them and hopefully more people get involved. Just give us what sports you like and then we can discuss from there and then we can work on a train of thought, really. Any questions you have about sport, just whack it in. And you can even ask my views on certain sports and why I like or dislike them. My hobbies, I like video gaming. I'm a big fan of ice hockey. I'm a big fan of reading. I have a history channel as well, but I do have a lot of video games, films. So video gaming is a big thing. Film is a big thing as well that I really enjoy, and history is a big thing that I really enjoy. Hence why there's a stack of books here. Um, but sport is my main thing. I used to play rugby for my local rugby club. I used to play rugby and football, cricket for my school, and athletics, and had some scouts that come in. I didn't get selected, which was a bit annoying, but I played with some now current professional players who play professional sport in those sports, which is kind of, I think, given me this mindset. And of course, my dad and granddad were non-league football players, so I've got a bit of a sporting background in my family. I've been watching sport now for 25, 26 years since I was a yay high to a grasshopper. So I've been really involved with sport in some capacity for quite some time. As you can see, I'm wearing NHL gear, so I like my ice hockey. I support my local ice hockey team where I live in the UK in their local league. I go down every home game, so I'm very active in the sports kind of world. In a sense, locally, I do enjoy watching sport in the armchair at a stadium. I enjoy looking at um, Oh, interesting. So the tech side of it. Now we could discuss the tech side of a variety of things, including sport. It's interesting that you popped by a sports live stream and you found this channel. I do have obviously the history boffin channel, which I haven't done as many videos on lately. I normally do one video a week on that, and that could be something that interests you about how technology, like such as Android, um, can help with some of the social issues that we face today and some of the technical issues that we face today. So that could be a channel that you should check out. I have done a few videos on that, doing some more. Be interesting to see what your views are on some of the video game reviews I've done and film reviews I've done. But that's a hobby. You enjoy doing it. It's crucial, I think, to anything. This YouTube is actually one of my hobbies. It keeps me sort of straight and narrow, I suppose. I spend a lot of time doing my videos. I do them in one take. So if you see my videos on my playlist, they're all done in one take. There isn't stop, take two, edit it. I do it all in one, get it done, filmed and done and out, which I think helps with the speed of upload. Sometimes I think it was one day I did like 15 videos in a day because it was just one take, film, do, one take, film, get it done. Solve the editing, keep it simple, keep costs down. I don't have, as you can see, this is my studio, is my bedroom. I do not have a lot of backup. I don't have cameras and lighting. It is just me with a laptop webcam, which isn't the best quality. I will admit, my laptop webcam is eh, needs updating. I need to get a new webcam and sort that out. But basically, plain and simple. Keep it simple. Keep it plain. Don't overcomplicate it. Get it up there. But yeah, no, I cover all sports. Unlike some channels which focus on a particular league, a particular team, or a particular sport, I cover everything. So if I think a story is interesting or worth discussing, I'll back it up. I mean, I look at a variety of leagues. I will watch a lot of live sport if I can, and post my review on that match. Bang, straight up. I will question, certain things, look at various bits and pieces. I don't cover every single match of every single sport, but I try and cover as much as possible to keep you guys interested, and we can have debates in these live streams, which I seem to do on a regular basis right now as I'm in between work. But when I'm working, I try and regulate what happens on the channel, a couple of videos a day and a live stream a week. But at the moment, I'm doing live streams almost daily. So you can always pop in and ask the questions you want and get the answers. I mean, do you actually like sport? I mean, is there any sports that you did as a youth? Is there any sports that you would happily watch? This is kind of the stuff that I like seeing from new subscribers or new viewers who come into the live stream and ask questions. It gives me an idea of what you guys like and what you guys want me to cover, because I'm getting a lot of questions about the NBA. I don't like basketball. I've done some videos on the NBA, of the structures of the NBA, the finances of the NBA, some of the contracts in the NBA, but I don't follow it. So when people ask, do I like the NBA? Yeah, it's quite simple. Sometimes I think simple is best. I think simple works well. It keeps costs a hell of a lot cheaper. All I have to do is invest in the laptop. That is it, and the McAfee internet security. That's all I've had to do is buy a laptop, one-off payment. Buy McAfee, one-off payment. Bush, here we go. Got laptop cover for a year. Jobs are good, and that's all I've had to really use is bang, bang, done. It keeps costs nice and low. I've done a few videos off my iPad, but my iPad's getting old, and that was a gift from 4 years ago, so that's on the way out. That's sadly dying. My phone, I'm having issues with my phone, so laptop is the way. it works really, really well. I like keeping things simple. I like keeping things basic. It works so well. I do have a whiteboard down here, which hasn't been dragged out in a while, but I occasionally get the old whiteboard out on some longer videos when I'm discussing a history of a team or a history of a league or a majorly important incident. The whiteboard comes out. The marker pens, which have gone somewhere, which are up there, they come out. I like when people touch my stuff. It's amazing because then I can't find anything because people have no respect. But I have marker pens which have fucking moved for some reason, which is annoying, and they shouldn't have done. And someone's going to get an earful. There you go, there. So I have a selection of coloured marker pens. I get the whiteboard out occasionally. I've made some homemade magnets, but they're a bit not. I'm not happy with them. I try to brighten up, but I get the whiteboard out. It's interesting. And I found that I do need a better webcam. It's plain and simple. My phone is a pile of crap. It's a Samsung J6. I can't update it anymore. The memory is useless. It's destroyed my SD card's been corrupted by it. I've had enough of this phone. It needs an upgrade. That's my phone. It's a pile of crap, and I would advise don't get a J6 because the memory useless. I cannot format the SD card. The SD card's now been corrupted and damaged apparently, even though it's not been taken out of the pissing device. So that's done something. Can't update anything on it. I've had enough. It's pain in the arse, and I'm going to melt it one day with a blowtorch. I'm going to have to see if when my upgrade's due. I've had enough of a phone that doesn't do what it's meant to do, and I'll be letting EE, the network, know that I'm not happy with the service they have provided. Because apparently my upgrade is not due yet, but I think it will be when I give them an earful saying I want my upgrade now. I'm sick and tired of waiting. Oh yeah, it's crap. I mean, I don't mind the phone; it does what I want it to do. But for some reason, this is a replacement handset. The first handset had a screen fault, and it worked brilliantly up until the screen fault. It would update regularly. I could have multiple apps on there, no problem. Had to replace it. What they said was, well, we can give you the same phone you had before, and it doesn't want to do what the old phone did. I've got less memory for some reason. I've got less apps running than the previous one I had, which was exactly the same phone. The previous phone had a crack, which went down the side of the screen there. We don't know how it happened. It could have been a stress fracture in the screen. I was working as a farm labourer at the time. Could have slightly bashed it. We don't know. They did say they'd never seen that as a warranty failure before. However, they were willing to basically give me a new handset. I had to pay for the new handset, but they were willing to replace it for like. However, I've had this now since June, July, May, June, July time. And for some reason, it's worse than the old one. Exactly the same phone, less memory. I am using less apps now than I was before, and I can't update my YouTube. I can't update my WhatsApp. It's frustrating, and I'm waiting for an upgrade, which I should be due now. So it's done my SD card in for some reason, which I spent a lot of money buying. Wouldn't format to use the memory for the SD card. Hasn't worked. Frustrated me. Now it's apparently the SD card's damaged. Never been taken out the phone. It's would advise if you need a replacement phone on the cheap, don't get a Samsung J6 S3, pile of shit. And I've had enough of it, and it's really frustrating. I will have to check your channel out. So if you have some tech advice on how to hit this phone with a hammer, I would love to watch that. I'd like to see what you actually do with designing stuff on your Android device. That'd be really, really interesting because the applications you can get from that are really interesting. It's interesting having a tech guy on the chat. It's really interesting. I know it's not sports based, but it is interesting because it gives a different perspective for issues. I mean, honestly, I would like to know what sports you actually like. That would be interesting for me, and then I can see what your knowledge is and what you enjoy and not enjoy, and what your dislike of sport is and why. We could. Oh, yeah, I'm more than happy to have a little look if you've got a Samsung J6 S3 tutorial about how to make the bloody thing update and use the memory correctly, because I'm getting frustrated with the lack of memory daily. Can't do all my updates. It just says not enough memory. I have no more stuff I can delete. Literally, I have nothing more I can delete or free up. It's frustrating. I can't reformat the SD card. It's just reached a point now where I've had enough. So I could use some help there. But I really appreciate you coming into the live chat. I really appreciate you putting up with me listening to me discuss sport for about 7 minutes and then ask you questions. But I'll be interested to see what sports you actually like, because then it gives me a better idea of what I can tailor for you content-wise. So if you like a particular sport, I could do some research on it, get the whiteboard out, and be particularly bookwormy. Having had the whiteboard out in about 3 months, it'd be nice to get it out and do some videos with the old whiteboard down here. And so you like football, okay? What type of football are you? Are you from Europe? Are you from North America? This is the first one. I'm assuming you're British, so we'll go with the European leagues. Football has a problem. It does. And now you're a tech guy, so I'm going to put the tech question out. I'm going to put the tech argument. What is with the Premier League having to vote for VAR before the World Cup? They based the VAR vote on what happened in Australia in the A-League Grand Final when the VAR failed. They did a vote. They decided to push back VAR for a year. World Cup comes along. VAR works reasonably well. Makes Premier League look really stupid. I'm so surprised that football is dragging. Yes, football's fine. So I'm assuming you're from North America. If you call it soccer. Hi Hornet, how you doing? The VAR thing and football in general. I'm really surprised soccer if you're from where you are in the world, depending where you are. The way they are. Okay, so you're from Southeast Asia. Okay. Asian football is being left behind. It is. There are issues within domestic leagues of corruption in the Philippines and China and Japan and South Korea. There's a lot of issues with corruption there that have been well highlighted. And I suggest you check out a sports journalist, an undercover journalist called Declan Hill. He's uncovered vast amounts of corrupt dealings in Asian sport. The issue is, I'm surprised. You're from the Philippines and you're Arabic. This is just mad. So you really are a man of the world. The issue with football is they've allowed things such as the betting companies to get too much influence with sponsorship, and there's issues with illegal betting and legal betting, and there's that issue there with the gambling companies having a big say in sponsorship revenues for tournaments and leagues, and then you've got the lack of movement and the time it has taken to get technology involved in the sport to improve the game, whereas sports like rugby and cricket, tennis, they're further ahead with implementing technology to help officiating. Well, that is a mix, half Syrian, half Filipino. That is interesting ethnic background. Really interesting. But more the merrier. I think the world would be a better place if people didn't look at people's nationality or ethnic background in a negative way, but unfortunately they do. Very interesting to see how half Syrian, half Filipino. I think I'm one of the few on the channel that is from that kind of background. Yes, Hornet, VAR does need it. And we discussed last night with Charlie Austin's comments at the weekend. He's right though. Some of the flack he's been taking on social media is a bit unnecessary because he is right. I would, if you put a Watford player in the same situation and allowed them to speak freely, you would have got pretty much the same response with "we need the technology now." I think the players are like, okay, we are willing to evolve the sport, because you look at other sports and they do have technology involved with the officiating. The officials are given instant replays to look at incidents if it's 50-50. They are allowed that assistance. I know football's a fast flowing game, but if ice hockey can pull off in the NHL at the highest level video assistance, I'm surprised football is not going down that route. Ice hockey is such a quick sport. Top level, they have that video review system. I'm really surprised that football is, with the amount of money in the sport compared to other sports worldwide, it's really dragging its feet on a global level. With some leagues trialing VAR this season, some leagues not. The Premier League is making itself look very silly with the way it voted before the World Cup. They should have waited until after the World Cup. They knew there was a massive tournament that was going to be experimenting with this VAR system. They decided to do it beforehand, really short-sighted by the FA and the Premier League, which they regularly do. They're regularly like this. So yeah, but talking about the Premier League, obviously Richard Skidmore is stepping down next month, and the Premier League is demanding that all the clubs pay a little bit of money into the pot. Right? Apparently, 5 clubs are refusing to pay any money towards Skidmore at all, which is good. His replacement is a woman who has worked in TV for quite some time and is anti-Sky. She's had many battles with Sky because a lot of her channels are on Sky, as in the Sky box, but not owned by Sky, and have been badly treated by Sky in the past. And she's had a battle about plurality in British media and has basically had loggerheads with the Murdoch family many times over the years when she was in charge of Discovery and worked with MTV and worked on National Geographic. She has had regular run-ins with Sky. We could see a change in how we as fans receive our football, and how we um, and how we get free to air football. It's going to be really interesting to see, what we get with her in charge of the Premier League. It's really going to be very, very interesting. And it could be very, very interesting to see what kind of battle she has with the TV companies over TV rights, and what we as have at the end. Do we get more free to air games? Do they, because there's that unsold package that we have? There are issues about is there too much football on TV? Are the TV rights right with the UEFA Nations League going to Sky? Is that acceptable with international football being taken off free to air TV more? With fans are obviously reacting by not being happy with ticket pricing. So she's got a lot on her plate with this to deal with this alleged European Super League being put forward by some clubs, from the Premier League being involved in apparently secret meetings there. There's a lot on our plate that Scudemore's leaving behind. The massive rise in the TV deals, fair enough. The clubs are making more money out of TV, fine. But why is the ticket price in that period shooting up sky high? Good to see, Storm. I will check out your channel and see what your channel is all about. It seems to be quite interesting. So I'll go through the comment section after this video. I'll have a little look at your channel. It might be able to help me with my crappy Samsung phone that I'm had enough with. So I will appreciate your input. I'm going to check out your channel as well. Good to see you. Talk about football. If football is your favourite, or soccer as you would call it in the Philippines, we have to look at why there are issues of corruption in football and why they persist as long as they have. And it is concerning. Thank you very much for the subscription. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate that. I will definitely will have to have a look at your channel at some point. Leeds Centurions, will they go out of business? Yeah, well, they built all that new stadium in Lee, the community valley, whatever it's called, the Lee Sports Village or whatever it's called, which is a damn good facility, and it has cost a fair bit of money. I hope they don't end the same way as the Bradford Bulls. I really don't. But there is an issue with finances in English rugby league. The Aussies have had issues in the NRL with finances of clubs like the West Tigers and Parramatta and Cronulla, but they seem to have resolved them somehow. Super League has a different structure, different system, promotion, relegation. We've seen with the Bradford Bulls, a very successful side in the 90s and the 2000s, hit the brick walls. There are issues with finances in Super League and Championship and League One. There are issues in rugby league. I don't. Yes, they are putting in a new kind of trophy in there. I don't think that necessarily solves the problem. It's like having the Football League Cup and the FA Cup. It just means more games for these guys to play because the League One and Championship sides already play in the Challenge Cup. They like playing in the Challenge Cup. They welcome playing in the Challenge Cup because it brings revenue. If you were to put in an extra trophy in there, that means more games, more risk of injury. You've got to pay those players for those games as well. Is it the right way to go? I don't know. Leeds Centurions have spent a lot of money on their stadium and the sports complex they have built. It's a lot of money. They banked on being in the Super League on a long-term basis. That didn't happen. Very similar to the London Broncos, who've had money issues as well. London Broncos tried to solve some of their money problems by combining with a rugby union club in Harlequins, and that did it really work? I don't know. They played at a stadium called the Stoop. They couldn't fill it, so they had a lot of unsold tickets. I'm not sure rugby league is in a good place right now. The National Rugby League, English Rugby League as a whole, made a loss last year of 3 to 4 million, and that was partly to do with the World Cup. So there are issues financial wise for the sport as a whole, not just Lee Centurions. The plans that they've got rid of the £1 million game, which was completely a flawed system. I have concerns, not just for Lee, but I think for if the League One teams have said this is unsustainable, it makes sense not to have it. This is rugby league trying to solve a problem by going back into something that has been played for in the past. It just means extra games, extra chance of injury. At that level, players aren't paid a lot of money. And if they are out injured for a long period of time, that is bad. And if they have to retire, they don't have the income to step back on. There isn't the money in Super League that was envisioned in 1995 when they signed the grubby deal with Murdoch and Sky. Sky hasn't benefited Super League as much as it should have. It's not like the Football Premier League. It hasn't benefited as much as it should have pre-95. The game was doing decent. You come along with Super League 95. It was meant to stave off the challenge from rugby union going professional. Yet rugby union seems to go from strength to strength in quality level. England have won the World Cup in rugby union now. Rugby league, we haven't. So I don't know. The Super League for the early days was good, and then the NRL won their Super League war in Australia. They figured out the game in Australia in the late 90s, and the NRL's now gone from strength to strength and is far superior. Hence why the best English players are playing in the NRL. We're now getting outside backs going, yeah, we don't want to play in Super League anymore. We're going to try rugby league down under. The fact that in the past, the lower level League One clubs have said we don't want this competition anymore says that the authorities don't have a unified plan for the professional game. One way to get money into rugby league in the UK is to expand it in the south of England. That's where a lot of money is, and they're refusing. We've only got two, as far as I know, two teams south of Watford in rugby league, and that's the London Scholars and the London Broncos. That's it. That's all we have in the south of England. And I'm a rugby league fan, and I live near London. So for me to go see a rugby league match, I would have to travel to the Midlands as a minimum and beyond, and that is unsustainable. This is why they have a limited fan base and a limited talent pool, is because they're playing the game predominantly. I know we've got the Toronto Wolfpack now in Canada, and we've got Toulouse and Catalan in France playing in the Super League structure, but that limits where I can go to watch games. My nearest, if I want to watch decent rugby league, I've got the Broncos in London now and the Scholars. But if they're playing both away, where am I going to watch a rugby league game in this country? Easily accessible for me, with taking into consideration travel costs, accommodation should they be required, should B&B or hotel, should I have to stay overnight, and who will I go and see play? This is where rugby league is missing a massive trick. They could expand massively in the south of England, build a brand new league, like a league below League One, get some investment in there, really try and grow at grassroots level. By working with rugby union as well, because there are rugby clubs with the right size pitches where you could have a joint venture, between union and league. They've done it before with Harlequins and London Broncos. Okay, it didn't fully work, but they really have to look at possibly looking at this and going, this is how we can grow the game, because rugby union has so many more levels. I mean, my local rugby club plays in Southwest Division 1 or Southern Division 2 or something. It's playing in like the fifth, sixth tier of English rugby, because rugby union has a multitude of tiers, whereas rugby league has 3 divisions. Rugby union has a multitude more. To say that it's not working is a lot of trollop, because there are professional clubs in the Midlands and the north of England that are doing very, very well at rugby union. Rugby league, 2 professional clubs in the south of England. It seems that rugby union is winning the code battle that rugby league used to dominate. Professionalism. It seems, I don't know. We had the Hemel Hempstead Stags. They've gone. Oxford and Gloucester, but this is the problem. Rugby league puts these expansion teams in, doesn't support. The fact that the Scholars and the Broncos are still going in London is a testament to just their willingness not to give in. They've gone through some tough financial times. They really have, the Broncos. They're still going. But they weren't given enough support from the Super League, from Rugby League UK. They really weren't. Look at the Welsh game. The Welsh game is in tatters, complete and utter mess. It's not worked in Wales because the funding isn't there. You've got to look at the amount of rugby union clubs in Wales versus rugby league clubs in Wales. You've got 2 in Wales, rugby league, massive amounts in rugby union. Sums up the problem. It sums up the issue. And there's people whinge about the class divide between union and league and calling union players all snobs. Half the England side came from state schools, so rugby union's getting it right. They're getting more rugby union played in state schools. Rugby league, again, it's a Northerners game. They don't want to touch the South. They think we're all upper class tops. There are some working class communities in the south of England that I think would definitely pick it up. They feel priced out by football. A lot of fans are feeling priced out by the Premier League and even the Championship to a point. There's a lot of fans who are into sport that want to support something local, some community, that have a chance there. They're refusing to do it year on year. When they do it, they fuck it up by not supporting the clubs that they decide to put in place. So it does need looking at and doing properly, but rugby league continues to get it wrong massively. It's a shambles, rugby league. To be taken seriously as a national competition, get teams in the south of England and support them. And support them well, to give them every chance to be self-sustaining once the support is pulled back slowly. Give them a chance. Mostly white fan base, not representative of the communities that the clubs play in. They went for this professional view in rugby league years ago. Yeah, they all vote Labour. I don't get that, where they're going to have massive salary cap put in. The Sky deal hasn't benefited Super League as much as it should have. So that money isn't, trickling down. They need to reassess that TV deal. They need to be more representative of the communities that they play in. There's a large Asian community that's underrepresented in the fan base and playing wise. They're not reaching out to minority communities up north. It is like they live in the 1950s and 50s. The game has evolved. You've got to look at rugby league in Australia, the amount of Indigenous players playing rugby league now, and the amount of fans from minority backgrounds watching it. It's not. The culture is different. The standard is different. It's better. They've worked out. There are issues with the NRL, absolutely, but they have been to Perth before. They've been to Adelaide before during the Super League wars when they were trying to work out what was the best format for the league and rugby league in general. They had teams in Perth. They had teams in Adelaide. They gave it a go. And they had to then shrink the league down to re-expand slowly. And I can see the NRL reaching 18 teams, going to Perth and Adelaide again, solidifying, supporting, which they do every time they expand. They solidify and support. I don't know. Rugby union's winning the battle. It really is winning the battle. Player depth is there. The amount of tiers of rugby union compared to tiers of rugby league is there. For those who bash rugby union in the north of England, why they're professional teams in the north of England then that are doing well and have done well in the past, like Newcastle, Sale, and Leeds. It makes a mockery of rugby league that they can't and they're not willing to expand in the south of England because apparently we're all upper class tops. We're not. There are many working class communities here. I don't know. They'll get a lot more money out of it. It will help the game massively. If they're happy to put Toronto in, then which adds a lot of cost, by the way, for travel across the Atlantic for these League One and Championship teams they've had to face. Why are they so against it? It's the logical way to go. It will gain a lot more revenue coming in, more investment. There are so many rugby union clubs that, bear in mind, rugby league takes place in the summer now, that be happy to share their facilities because it means the rugby union clubs get money as well. It means that all year round that clubhouse has got involvement from the local community rather than just the autumn, winter, spring rugby union. It means in the summer those facilities are being used, the community is involved. I really don't get it. At all. The only two rugby league clubs that have combined with the rugby union club seems to be Leeds with the Yorkshire Carnegie. They use the same stadium, and Harlequins did it with London Broncos for a couple of years. that is a possible way to go. If you're worried about finances necessarily, get a rugby union club on board to have a rugby league club in the summer, have a joint code club. Uh, we shall see. I think there is an issue, and I think the Super League needs to face the fact that it isn't the 1950s anymore. Sport is global, and if they persist on this regionalist, we're only playing in this location, it will leave them behind. The same issue sort of applies to French both codes of rugby in France, very southwestern, southern game, very few clubs in the north. Yes, Salford and Sale, I think they're owned by different people, but they use the same stadium on a rental purpose. They need to seriously look at what is going on because the Midlands untapped, the southeast really untapped, and if you take the two London sides out, there's nothing there. And if you want to persist in having the Challenge Cup final in the south of England at Wembley, you might as well invest more into the south of England with getting teams set up, because this is unsustainable going forward. It really is unsustainable going forward. Um, we need to get outside investment. If they're willing to go to Canada, they should be willing to come to the south of England. There's a lot of wealth in the south of England. It will help with community investment. There is a lot of run-down working class areas that could use that kind of injection of investment of sport facilities and community facilities. Um, you know, untapped waters, untapped, resource there if done properly. And for some reason, the Super League doesn't want to do it, and Rugby League doesn't want to do it, and that's, I think, killing the sport slowly because the TV deal is unfavourable because of Sky. They've got them in a oh yeah, totally. It is crazy that there's only two teams that I can think of in the Scholars and the Broncos based in the London area, which again is a problem in itself. A lot of sports fans are very angry that the London centric or Manchester centric, because that's where basically the media is based, Manchester and London. They're very frustrated with a lot of Manchester London centric based. We've got one final in Manchester, one final in London. A lot of fans are very against this. They want to see the final take on the road around the UK, which will also help the sport massively. Um, I understand that the roots of rugby league are in the north of England, but it should be spreading wider and further afield if it is to challenge the NRL, and beat the NRL again. It's going to have to expand and widen its horizons. The good thing about the Broncos is 8 of their players are from London or southeast area, so it does say um, that for me there is an interest there. Um, from fans to go and young kids wanting to play the game. So the Broncos have got something right where they've managed to pick up a few players who would have been playing rugby union or ice hockey. Yes, ice hockey as well. Um, talking about ice hockey, they've managed to find a big physical bunch of lads so you can play other sports. Go, do you want to just give rugby league a go? They say yes, they enjoy it, they're very good at it, they get a promotion, they're back in the Super League. 8 players from the southeast and London area are now playing Super League next year because of the Broncos. So that's a positive. They need to, if it is to be successful, we've got to see if London Scholars can go up a level. But we have to grow the game to have more than just 3 levels of competition. That's an issue that Australia doesn't have because each state in Australia has a rugby league system at semi-professional level. Do I think the northwest of England needs a second team in ice hockey? The Hull Pirates. There are issues with the Hull Pirates. Their coach has gone on the rampage against his players, and they've hit a rocky bit of form. I think possibly the south of England could use another team or two. I think Peterborough and Bracknell also should be considered. I'm a Bracknell fan. I would say that. The fact that Bracknell had been invited before the Elite League and said no back in, I think, 2005, I believe, when the British National League went tits up, is an interesting subplot, is that they have approached Bracknell in the past. I think Bracknell's rink needs a fair bit of refurb. I think we need to work out the front entrance tills. We need to work out refurbing some of the seating areas. I think the rink is the right size. It's about the money. Peterborough, again, rinks the right size, needed a few touch-ups on their rink, get their rink up to standard. Hull, they've been the Elite League before and have failed with the Stingrays. So that will sit in the back of people's minds that they have had a team at this level before that has not met the grade financially. So that will be in the back of people's minds. The Hull Pirates have only been around as a team for a couple of years. It's about, I think, 2014, 2015, they've been a team. So they haven't been around long. They haven't had long to establish themselves as a playing unit. So we shall see. On in a podcast, the man said we can be a big small sport or a small big sport. I guess now we decide what we want. I'm assuming that's to do with rugby league. Um, the only way rugby league is going to get on rugby union's level for interest is to expand the game in the south of England. More people live in the south of England. There's more money in the south of England. There's a lot of rugby union clubs in the south of England that are in dire straits financially that could use that injection where they have a joint code club. It means more people are members of the club, more money's coming in, the facilities are there. It makes a lot of sense. Is there a few English we need to play in the NHL? We have had British players before. There's a player called Brendan Pellini who plays for the Arizona Coyotes, former teammate of Liam Kirk. His brother's a former teammate of Liam Kirk at the national side. Born in Guildford, but he's technically Canadian because his dad was playing for the Guildford Flames back in the 90s when he was born. He's a British-born player, but he's actually Canadian by nationality, even though he has been drafted and plays in the NHL. He could technically play for the UK at international level. He's decided to represent Canada. His brother plays for the UK international level because he still plays in the UK, ironically enough. Obviously, Liam Kirk's been drafted. We have had British-born players play in the NHL, but not trained in the UK. So you can have loads of British-born players who can represent the UK, but they haven't played in the UK. So when they were young players, they went over to Canada or the US, learnt their trade there, ended up playing in the NHL. I would say Liam Kirk is a starting point. The Elite League has improved massively over the last couple of years. Ben O'Connor, possibly. He's had a little tryout in the SHL. He's gone back to Sheffield for a variety of reasons. I think there are some young players in the pipeline who are playing university level in North America, who have played junior hockey in North America, have played in Europe, that are floating around. There are one or two. I can see the playing level improving. It all depends on the next couple of years, how many more young players can come through, not just through Sheffield, but a variety of teams up and down the land, both Elite League and NIHL. That league structure will change, by the way, so keep your eyes open on what happens in the summer there. It does also depend on if the Elite League keeps expanding, because that means it increases the talent pool at the top level. And that's why I can see Hull, Bracknell, and Peterborough getting that little phone call saying, do you want to join our little scheme? Finances are an issue, mind, but there is a TV deal with Free Sports, which is owned by Premier Sports. So the game is growing. I think Liam Kirk is a catalyst. It all depends on his development. If his development kicks on and he gets into the senior professional ranks in the ECHL, AHL, or NHL at any point for a game in the NHL, a series of games in the NHL, I think ECHL is where the Elite League is at professionally wise at the moment, which is still a damn good level of hockey to play. It just means, you're getting a couple $100,000 a year at the top level, which is still not bad wages considering. I can see Liam Kirk playing professionally in North America in the ECHL, possibly AHL, maybe NHL at a push because he was a late round draft pick, although I believe he's a steal as well. He did drop in the draft significantly from, I think, the third round to the seventh round, so he could end up playing a lot sooner than we think. Arizona definitely sees something in him. I think having Pellini, who was born in the UK and understands the UK market a little bit as a player through his dad, I think has helped. I don't think that type of quality is regularly being produced yet, but it is definitely doable as long as the Elite League expands in the correct areas, the TV deal becomes more permanent, and crowd numbers continue to rise, because we are seeing a renewed interest with Liam Kirk getting drafted and Ben O'Connor playing abroad. We are seeing a renewed interest in British ice hockey. Money is an issue, though, within British ice hockey. We are seeing some teams struggle financially. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens long term. It's going to be interesting to see what we keep producing at the Elite League level and from the levels below coming up on two-way contracts. We are seeing a lot of players on two-way contracts. That is an Arizona top. I have a Capitals and Jets in the cupboard. And over there, I have some crap as well. I have hockey crap all over the place. I got this for Christmas off my mum a couple of years ago. It's nice, it's warm. It's an old Reebok one. So obviously, Adidas is the new manufacturer of shirts. I've got some Vegas stuff as well from CCM and what's the other company? Well, Arizona, Washington, Winnipeg, Vegas. Yeah, I've got 4 teams worth of merchandise. I've got other hockey jerseys from the UK and around the world in the cupboard. So we've got Croatian national jersey. We have a beer league jersey from North America, which I managed to pick up, which is a steal, by the way. I've got a German hockey league all-star jersey. So I've got a fair bit of hockey memorabilia. I wouldn't get it all out now because that will be a pain in the arse. But I do have a fair amount of hockey gear in the cupboard. But yes, I'm a big Jets and big Coyotes fan. What are my thoughts on the UEFA League of Nations? It gets rid of the annoying friendlies a lot of the time. The issue is the TV rights going to Sky in the UK. This summer we saw the national team reconnect with the fans, give us something to cheer about for the first time in a decade, 2 decades. And straight away, as soon as the UEFA Nations League comes about, Sky get all the rights to all the home nations. Big mistake. I think it's obviously his first full season of it as well, so we have to see what the feedback is. But it's here to stay, whether we like it or not. Whether it stays long term or not is another thing. But we'll have to see what the feedback is from fans. We have to see what the feedback is from the players, the coaching staff, how it affects the qualification for the Euros, because that's basically what they're doing it for. It's an experiment over the next couple of years. UEFA are keen on these experiments and pull the plug on them, so we have to see what happens. Because I haven't been able to watch any because it's on Sky, which is a pain in the ass. It's automatically cut out a lot of football fans. They got reconnected with the national side over the summer, so I think they made a bit of a blunder with the TV rights. National football should be on free to air TV. I couldn't give a sod about club football, but if you wanted the best players in the country, should be free to air and easily accessible. And then the FA have decided to go for the grubby money route as usual. Is this money going to youth level? No. Is it going to grassroots level? No. It's going into the executive pockets. So the TV rights have to be looked at. If it's to be a success, you have to get the fans on board. And I think they're running the risk here with TV rights being on Sky in the UK, that they're running the risk of turning fans off again when they just got the fans turned back on. So it'll be interesting to see what happens long term. I know friendlies are still on telly. It's Man City, so it's Guardiola, ticky tacky. Great, 44 passes. They're trying to copy Argentina of 2006. It's not really that amazing. Teams in the 80s and the 70s used to do it regularly on worse pitches. Yeah, City are far better than Man United. Big deal. Yay. The Manchester narrative, again, with the media in this country being either London or Manchester based, it's really boring. There are other clubs out there that aren't based in Manchester or London. But I'm not really as in love with football as I used to be. Man City's defence is still wobbly, and I think we'll see what happens. They haven't won the Champions League yet with all this money, so yeah, they basically bought the English league for a decade to come. But they haven't won the Champions League yet. Let's see them doing the Champions League. Let's see if they can get the final, because that's the trophy I think they've really won. And I think Guardiola, even though he signed this contract extension, I don't think he's going to be there that long. He'll go to someone who can win the Champions League, because I don't think they can win the Champions League with this side. Just wait and see. Let's see what happens. But Man City are. Oh yeah, Man City are nothing overly special. They had a great season last year, which is a one-off. I don't think that's ever repeated again with the amount of points and goals they got. They haven't won the Champions League yet with all this money. So it took them 5 years to win the Premier League with all the money they had anyway. They regularly breach financial fair play. So there's concerns about them getting around rules that are put in place to stop clubs going bust. Their defence still not sold in it. We saw last season Liverpool destroy them in 3 out of the 4 games they played against each other and embarrassed Man City defensively. So they have issues in that defensive area. De Bruyne is starting to become injury prone. So that's concerning. Sterling getting that penalty the other day where he basically kicked the floor. Yeah, they're getting a lot of luck they shouldn't have with officiating. Guardiola has always managed big clubs with massive resources. He's never had to be his back against the wall. So I would like to see Guardiola take on a club with no money and see if he can work his magic with a team like, I don't know, Huddersfield. Then I'll say he's the best manager in the world. Man United aren't the side they were. Mourinho is just ultimately dull football, and parking the bus hasn't worked. Back in the 70s and the 80s, national sides and club sides used to do this all the time on worse pitches. So I don't know. I'm not sold on Man City. They've had a great season last year. They're not running away the league this season because guess what? Other sides have upped their game. I think De Bruyne's getting injured a lot is going to hold them back. we shall see. When their defence gets properly tested, it does struggle. They're not as good as they were last season. I'm going to say that. Other teams have caught them up. Jurgen Klopp's worked out a way to beat City. He's the only manager in the league that's got a positive record against Guardiola all time. I think he's the only manager in the world who's got a positive record against Guardiola all time. Guardiola has a banana skin, and that is Jurgen Klopp. And that could prove the difference between winning the title and not winning the title. I think on that defence, it's not the best defence Man City have had in the Sheikh Mansour era. And a lot of City fans are bandwagon fans who didn't sit through the tough times at Main Road and the tough times as now what has become the Etihad when they were a crap team. It took them 5 years to actually win anything with the money they've got. They haven't actually won everything every season. They've been like this. So I don't know. And they're currently on the spotlight for the allegedly want to have this European Super League and the breach of financial fair play. So the whole off-field issues with Man City are, that could be interesting to see what kind of effects what's happening off the field will have long term. There's always a lot of empty seats at Man City as well. A lot of empty seats. They've been known to play. They're already having battles with UEFA. They've got to win that Champions League. If they're going to be taken seriously as a long-term big club winning all the time, they've got to win at their hands of that Champions League. And they haven't done it yet. And the closest they got was not with Guardiola, it was with Pellegrini. They got to the semi-final when they sacked him and replaced him with Guardiola and undermined him for a whole season. So I'm not a big fan of Man City. I never have been. But a lot of their fans are bandwagon fans who didn't sit through the tough times in the 90s when the team were really bad. Didn't sit through the trophy-less years when they didn't win anything. Not that Man United won much between 67 and 92, but they didn't win anything for a very, very long time. Most Man City fans are bandwagon fans. The hardcore don't like them. Man City is not a perfect club. But that's my view on Man City. I'm not going to go into it. I'm not a particular fan of any club from the Manchester area because of the team I support. But I sat through some tough times as a Blackburn fan. But I wouldn't change my allegiance for the world. A lot of people, when I was a kid growing up, said, I was a glory hunter because they won the Premier League once. We've only won one trophy since. I still have my Blackburn shirts. So if anyone go, what? Yeah, I get some stick for the team I support. But I know a lot of people who are glory supporters. And I know a lot of people who aren't. I do know some Man City fans from when the team were actually really, really crap. I went to school with a couple of them. And we would regularly poke fun at them because how bad the team were doing. And guess what? They're still Man City fans now all these years later. 44 passes for a goal. Argentina did that in the 2006 World Cup, where every single player, including the goalkeeper, had multiple touches on the ball. And Esteban Cambiasso scored a brilliant goal against Serbia and Montenegro in 2006. That doesn't overly impress me. The fact they probably sent the Man United fans to sleep because guess what? Mourinho is their manager and they're already asleep. If they were to do that against one of the best defensive teams in the world, then I'll be impressed. Man United are not the best defensively in the league this season. Their form is middling. They're under a lot of pressure because they're not performing. They're not playing well. Mourinho parks the bus a lot of the time. They showed no fight. They deserve to lose. It doesn't matter if you put 44 passes or 4 passes and score. The way Mourinho sets up his tactics is overly negative. That gives a negative feeling for the players. They're not going to play as well because they've got this negative manager, so they're going to feel negative and hang their heads. They're not going to be as free on the ball and as flying on the ball. I would like to see Man City do that in the Champions League against a Champions League quality opposition who are actually in a positive frame of mind. I would like to see Man City try and do that against Real Madrid, Barcelona, Borussia Dortmund. I would like to see Man City try and do that against some of the top teams in Europe. Blackburn are doing on the edge of the playoff positions. For a bright side from League One, that is sometimes a bit scary, sometimes on a positive. I don't think the squad is necessarily ready to take that big leap back to the Premier League, but we're not going to get relegated this season. That's the important thing. If we get to the playoffs, that's a couple extra games, a bit extra revenue. It's all good. But I'm not a fan of our owners. The way the owners have destroyed the club for so long, left the club with a lot of debt, left the club in a real weaker state than when they bought it. Made a mess of it. This is where the fit and proper persons test is a laughing stock, because the Venky's managed to buy a club and make a mess of it. We are doing all right. I am pretty content with where we are. We've got a good squad together. We've got some good young players coming through, like Bradley Dack, who's been a revelation. We're not conceding many goals. We're winning games that 2 years ago when we were in the Championship we were losing before we got relegated. So yeah, we are in a better place than where we were 2 years ago. I think Tony Mowbray is the right man at the moment. So when we get to the Premier League, that we may need to look about who we have as manager. I wouldn't be surprised if the Venky's do sell up and we get a different owner in. But that's just me. But we are doing reasonably well. Do I see Manchester United missing out on European football this season? Yes, I can. I can see them missing out on European football again. Under Mourinho, they have regressed. They've only got the Europa League to show for their efforts. They lost the most boring FA Cup final in history in May, which didn't bode well for the World Cup, but the World Cup really surprised. I can see some of these players are further behind than where they were last year at this stage. Not good enough. Mourinho, his battles with the media are getting toxic. The battles with his players are getting toxic. Very negative tactics a lot of the time. Park the bus. It didn't work against City. You've got to be more proactive and think on your feet. But he just wants to make a brick wall. It doesn't work. Yes, I can see them missing out. But people forget between 1967 and 1992, Man United didn't win a lot of trophies. They won a few FA Cups here or there and had a couple of runs in Europe, but they didn't win much. And they ended up in the second tier of English football. So no team is too big to get relegated. No manager's unsackable. People are forgetting this. I don't think he sees out the season. I'm surprised he isn't the first sacking this year in the Premier League. Jokanovic was literally this morning. So I don't know. I can see them slipping further back. Teams like Bournemouth and Watford have improved markedly. They're now in the mix with them in that kind of edge of Europe conversation. We saw Burnley last year get into Europe. Some of these teams that were considered mid-table teams a couple of years ago, or relegation-threatened teams, are improving markedly. Man United didn't do much on the transfer market this summer. 2 signings. One is an Asian goalkeeper, journeyman goalkeeper. The other guy is a reasonably young, talented Brazilian midfielder. Teams like Bournemouth and Watford and Liverpool really come on under Klopp. There's a few issues with Liverpool, but they have come on. Man United aren't necessarily a Big Six team anymore. They've got the biggest stadium, but they don't have the best team anymore. The Ferguson era, they got too used to Ferguson. They didn't have a succession plan. They've gone through a lot of managers now since Ferguson retired. That it started to bite them in the arse. They haven't won many trophies since Ferguson retired. They've gone through Moyes, Van Gaal, they've had Giggs for a little bit. They've now had Mourinho. It's not working out. Zidane is rumoured to be linked to the job. He is available. Obviously, Ranieri's now gone to Fulham, so he's now out of the running, and he's won the Premier League, and he's had to deal with difficult owners and done it reasonably well. Mourinho is in a situation now where he's up against it. He really is. The squad he's got isn't the best, but the tactics aren't helping. If he was more fluid in his tactics and more, I don't know, there's a word for it. Practical with his tactics. I'm going to use the word practical, where you're not so rigid in the defensive side of things and allow the players to flow a little bit. Pogba is not a defensive midfielder. He cannot defend corners and free kicks. Do not have him in the box. Keep him up front. He's got a bit of pace and a bit of vision to get out of there. He's a counter-attack player. You place him out of the box on the halfway line. Keep him out of the box. He cannot defend. Sadly, he keeps putting Pogba in these positions that doesn't suit Pogba's game. And Pogba, we know he's a bit lazy. We know he's defensively flawed. Play to his strengths. He's not doing that. Martial seems unsettled. Lindelof, is he not developing quick enough? Well, he's been thrown into a situation that doesn't aid development. Phil Jones, oh my God, I'm so glad we sold him to Man United. We made a nice tasty bit of money off Phil Jones because he's got more own goals than goals. He always looks unfit, out of position. Is Mourinho the best manager for him? No. Chris Smalling, how was he not taken to the World Cup? If Phil Jones was, I have not a clue. He's one of the better defenders they have. Carrick going from midfield, they've lost that experience. It's not all happy there. Mourinho is losing that dressing room very, very quickly. Sanchez is not performing on the wages that he's been paid. So all that effort to get him out of Arsenal, it's not really worth it. Valencia is now playing more as a wing back than a winger, so he's sort of playing out of position, which I do not understand. They never really replaced Vidic in the centre back position, or Rio Ferdinand, or Patrice Evra. They used to, when a player like Roy Keane or Jaap Stam retired, they would find a replacement very, very quickly, or an understudy that they could promote. They don't have that understudy system anymore. They're just throwing players in. There's no real cohesion. There's no real direction long term. The lack of transfers is a concern. The overpaying of wages is a massive concern. Some of the contracts on these players are far, far too much. I can see Mata possibly leaving as well. I can see a whole host of players wanting to leave at some point. De Gea is not De Gea anymore. He's human, very human. I think he's an overrated goalkeeper anyway, but that's just me. Romero's been injured a lot, so you've got two goalkeepers or international standards who aren't playing well. Is it Lee Grant or Lee Camp? Is it Lee Grant, the third choice goalkeeper? It's not a Premier League level goalkeeper. I'm not going to lie. There are issues there, but yeah, I think he's running out of time. He is, and if they miss European qualification or they don't qualify via getting a trophy like the FA Cup, they have to get the FA Cup now to guarantee European qualification because they're out the League Cup. He's done. We saw last year in the FA Cup final, the worst FA Cup final I've ever seen. And they were beaten by an equally misfiring Chelsea side, who then went on to sack their manager, who won them 2 trophies in 2 years. So I don't get them the modern footballing merry-go-round that is. I think this is why managers are put off and ex-players are put off going into management because they're not guaranteed a job security. I think Mourinho has had his time now. They haven't kicked on from finishing second last year. I know they were just in second, but they got second. They, got all that Champions League qualification now coming off the back of they lost an FA Cup final, but they're coming off the back of the season for winning a European trophy that they hadn't won before. They were growing again, going in the right direction, and this season it's just toxic. It's a toxic environment. If I was a player, I wouldn't want to play for a manager like that who is so negative in his outlook and so argumentative and so negative. It's not a happy environment. When you've got something as negative as that, it puts you off. I've had many a job where the environment becomes so negative that the morale gets so low that you don't produce what you better produce. I think it's the same in football. I think it's going wrong at Man United for a variety of reasons, but Mourinho is definitely one of them. I can't see him seeing out the season, but that's me. They either need to go on a very good winning unbeaten run, where they win a lot of games, or they need to win either in Europe or the FA Cup. They need to win a trophy to guarantee European competition for next season because their league position is not going to cut it. They're not going to cut it in the league. There are too many teams around them that are playing with more confidence and more positivity and playing better that I think they could finish as low as 10th. They could do a Chelsea and really struggle like they did on Mourinho and Conte. They could just drop off. But Chelsea have managed to sort of hang around. But his last season at Chelsea, they were shocking. So I don't know. I don't know. But because of the TV rights and the channels that have the Premier League rights, there's no point in I don't want to pay that kind of money to watch some pretty diabolical games. Actually, a lot of the Premier League games aren't of the highest quality. I regularly listen to Final Score on the radio or on the TV, and the amount of times that commentator for BBC Sport is saying this is a game of poor quality with poor chances happens a lot more than people realise. Very few teams play well regularly in the Premier League. The quality, it's an overrated league. It is. It's not the best league in the world. It's the most competitive league in the world, yeah, but it's not the best for quality sometimes. So it's a difficult one. But it is what it is. Hopefully, other European leagues become on a similar compete level. I don't, but it is what it is. There is a disconnect between the majority of fans and the sport right now. It's growing, and TV rights is a big problem with that. Big problem. I think we need more games on free-to-air TV, even if it's the lower leagues, just a game a weekend. I think that's what they need to do, and then you might get that connection back between fans and the football league and the Premier League, because I do see it being damaged right now, and the trust between football supporters and the governance of the game is at an all-time low. Oh yeah, you can say this about a lot of sports, but football, with the amount of money that has been made and the unaccessibility of that, rugby union is starting to put regular season games, be it in cup competitions or the league, on Channel 5. And rugby union is on Channel 4 now, ITV and BBC at various points in the year, be it international or club level rugby. Ice hockey now has Freeview Sport on Free Sports. So they're going the right way with the Elite Hockey League. And we're also getting the KHL and the SHL on Freeview on Free Sports as well. So ice hockey's worked something out with the TV companies. Rugby league, we still have the Challenge Cup on free to wear and the rugby test matches. So out of the major team sports in this country, football is one of the few that, only apart from the FA Cup, there isn't domestic games on as much. The club football, apart from the FA Cup, all on pay-per-view subscription TV. Internationals, more and more subscription TV. And other sports in this country are putting more back on free-to-air. They're actually putting more on free-to-air than they were last year. So yes, the FA Cup, they've got each round on the TV, and they will have televised games because football is the most popular sport in this country. But for the percentage of games on free-to-air TV compared to, subscription TV, is a lot less than ice hockey, than rugby league, than rugby union. There's your problem with the growing disconnect. Plus, what we were told when the TV deal was signed with Sky originally back in 1992, that was that ticket prices wouldn't rise too much and they would stay affordable, and that is not the case. Ticket prices and wages for players have gone through the roof massively over the last 20, 26 years, 27 years, that are unsustainable for the average fan to go. So I don't know what the future holds. The clubs could let us in for free, or for about a fiver to get in. They choose to whack it as high as 70, 80, 100 quid for a ticket. I don't know what we can do. Football is a big talking point for the finances, the accessibility, and governance. And other sports do have issues similar to this, but they seem to be willing to give more to free to wear and to keep ticket prices as competitively low as possible without making too much of a loss, and engaging more with fans in a better way. I don't know what it is. Other sports seem to have a better way of engaging with fans on the match night. If you go to a game, or with the TV rights, where they go, look, we are giving you more free-to-wear stuff. You've asked for it, we're giving you it. Let's see what the response is. And from what I'm getting, the response for having more free-to-wear rugby union, rugby league, and ice hockey has been very, very good. Football could take a leaf from that book and go, international football, we should have that free-to-wear TV, shouldn't we? Oh no, we're going to go with Sky. They've gone the opposite direction. They see a good thing, and they went, yeah, we'll just take the short-term money from Sky. And they signed that deal before Comcast bought the rights. I can see with the new head of the Premier League, who's going to be a woman, who's had her battles with Sky about accessibility for games, and accessibility for her, the channel she used to work for on the Sky platform, which weren't owned by Sky. They were owned by the people, but they had to pay a rental to Sky to be on the Sky package. She's had battles with Sky, Sky B, for a long time. She's fought the corner for MTV, the Discovery Channel network, the National Geographic network. I think she's worked for a few other TV networks as well that you can get on a Sky package, or even a BT package, or a Virgin Media package. It depends on what set-up box you have, but she's fought the battles with Sky regularly, and she's come out the other side, and those channels are still on Sky. So she's beaten Sky before. I can see her being a different kettle of fish than Mr. Scudamore, who's demanding a payout from every single Premier League club of 250k minimum. Some clubs are demanding as high as 5 or 6 clubs are refusing to pay money to Scudamore's pension pot. He earns enough anyway. Again, this greed is what's harming football, massively harming football. We've seen the Super League has a problem with being only on Sky. Now, if you look at Australia and you compare the Super League with the NRL, well, we're going to a rugby league now. Half their games are on free-to-air accessible TV, or you're given the choice to watch it on Sky or free-to-air. So I think that's what we need to possibly go down. But definitely giving Richard Scudamore the amount of money he's demanding from the clubs, wrong. I'm not paying a penny to the Premier League or the FA. It's why I haven't been to a football game in over a decade. I refuse to give these greedy fat cats any more of my money. I refuse to buy any more football jerseys. I don't pay for Sky Sports. I don't pay for BT Sport. I'm feeling disconnected because of what they're charging us. If you think about it, replica jerseys overpriced. Man United's jersey, 140 quid when it costs less than £2 to make, is a complete disgusting markup that is completely unacceptable. And the conditions that it's made in Southeast Asia, I am buying it. I'm not even a Man United fan, but if I was, I would buy it. But then you look at the lower levels of football in this country, and a lot of clubs are broke, absolutely broke. Notts County have sacked Harry Kewell this weekend. They're third bottom in the Football League. They are broke. They are not. They're on the verge of. Oh yeah, no. Skeeter was on a massive wage. And even after tax, he still has taken over about £1 million after tax, and his bonuses would have been taxed before he gets them. So he's earning over £1.125 million a year. No, I ain't giving him any more money. And apparently, some of the clubs have said no, that is obscene. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're not part of the Big Six. And I wouldn't be surprised if they're clubs like Bournemouth and Watford and Burnley, who are lesser clubs that want to break into that top six, but have basically got principles. And they do. Burnley, Bournemouth, and to a sense, Watford have principles. They are saying, no, we are not happy with what you're doing. And they've benefited a lot from the TV. Bournemouth, Watford, and Burnley have benefited massively, but they're on far smaller budgets, and they've probably said no. I wouldn't be surprised if Huddersfield have said no as well, because they weren't given the support that they needed over their academy, which they've been forced to shut. So some of these Premier League clubs do not have a lot of money, do not have massive budgets, and to give up between £250,000 to £5 million each is unsustainable and is disgusting. This is what's wrong with football. Is the greed. And the greed over the last 20, 25, 30 odd years is killing the sport. Not slowly, it's killing the sport quickly. And it's putting off a lot of fans who feel priced out with the pay-per-view system, the subscription TV system. They don't want to pay it. And BT Sport has failed to deliver that promised free-to-wear option of a sports network to Sky. It's also got on pay-per-view, and people don't want to pay for it. We need to have a sports network that is free-to-wear, that can compete with the grubby Sky and the grubby BT money. Because for the only way that we are going to have fans, still hardcore local fans that are feeling priced out, is to have a change. Yeah, FC United of Manchester, FC Chester, Portsmouth, the fans do have a bigger say in how Portsmouth Football Club is now run. Chester obviously gone under, which is a shame for the Football League club. And yeah, FC United of Manchester, those fans were unhappy with the Glazer takeover in 2005, have protested for years, have been solid, it will set Brighton Football Club, and they are doing rather well, may I add. They are a decent non-league side that are aiming to get in the Football League within the next couple of years, so they should not be underestimated. But there are a lot of fans who've just had enough, and yeah, FC United of Manchester is a prime example of a fan-run club that basically had enough of being taken for granted by the owners and the Premier League, and they said, "No, we're not playing this game anymore." And this is when United were winning trophies all the time. This is when United were one of the most successful clubs in the country at the time. They were top dogs on the Ferguson. They got taken over by the Glazer family from America, and straight away, a large portion of fans went, "Sod this. We are no longer being taken advantage of." The amount of debt that Man United has, if it was a standalone company and it wasn't for the Glazer family and their other investments in sport and business worldwide, they would be broke. They would be broke. The debt outweighs the income. It does. And this is at a time when Man United were winning everything. They're not winning everything now, are they? So this raises the question: they miss out on European football. That's a hit on revenues. They've missed out once already on European football post Ferguson, or a couple of times post Ferguson. That's a concern. The debt that they have, and not necessarily being guaranteed European football from season to season, is damaging their little business plan. But then again, the Glazers also own the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are a shocking team in American football. So they're not used to winning a lot of the time. They're used to losing a lot of the time. But the Glazers, yeah, there are concerns about the direction of the club, considering that Malcolm Glazer is now dead. His sons have taken over the running of the club. They were trying to sell to Arabs. I mean, Jews selling to Arabs makes logical sense because they're going to try and rip someone off. But that makes logical sense in a business sense because there's a dislike there between Saudi Arabia and Israel, and the Glazers are of Jewish Hebrew extraction. That will be interesting. That's fallen through, and that's the social side of it. I mean, the amount of debt they brought to the club is for other clubs crippling. And at the time, Man United were winning a lot, so they could balance that out with constantly playing Champions League football, constantly winning trophies, and that prize money that comes with league position of being in the top four. They don't have that anymore. They don't have that guaranteed winning side. So yeah, Man United definitely, and those FC United and Manchester fans, yeah, they wore the old green and yellow kit. They made their own scarves. Then the Glazers told stewards to eject people wearing that kit and that scarf, which angered fans more. And then it led to forming our own club. And yeah, they've shown what they can do with being fan owned, being driven, being goal orientated, and yeah, lots of people in Manchester go watch them play. FC Chester is a different one. They've had to go through several reincarnations. They've been bust several times. Same with Hereford. Again, the Football League failed them. And Portsmouth. Portsmouth is an interesting tale of woe, and they're slowly coming back. But it is a very interesting tale of woe because of how they were allowed to be badly run for so long, and where is that money gone? We've seen a court case over this. Milan Mandaric, every club he touches has financial problems, and he seems to make money out of it. So there are concerns with governance of the game. Apps. I think every sport has some kind of governance issue or structural issue that could be better, and every sport could improve. Oh God, football, not just in this country but around the world, is open to corruption. It's a worry. It is a worry. There are ongoing investigations into a variety of clubs, players, agents, and managers over taxes and tax avoidance. We could see a big story break about a football club being in deep issues with corruption or tax avoidance. We could see a massive story soon. We know it's circulating around the news wires. There is an ongoing investigation into the tax affairs and the financial affairs of clubs, players, agents, and managers, and investors and owners. There is allegedly a club that is under severe corruption allegations, not being named yet, but Fulham is one. There were allegations of corruption in the FA bid for Wembley, or whatever it was. Newcastle's another, under Mike Ashley. There are several clubs that have been alleged to be this super club that are under investigation for massive corruption, and that's in the English game. So, I don't like Sahih Khan. You got to look at the Jacksonville Jaguars. They're a crap NFL team. They've only had one good season on his ownership. Last time in the Premier League when Sahih Khan took over, he went through, I think, 3 managers. If you're sacking managers like Martin Yole, you know the guy's not a football man. He claims he wants to invest in English football. Blah 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 blah. He doesn't plan to move Fulham. He doesn't move Jacksonville. He was planning to move Jacksonville to London. I wouldn't trust a word that comes out of his mouth, if I'm honest. I wouldn't trust any American businessman who's worth over $1 billion to be not crooked. You have to be crooked in some way and to get by an American business. I think the sacking the way it's happened when Jukanovic was given the backing a week ago or less than a week ago is concerning, but I don't think Ranieri has the pieces in place to actually get out of trouble. I don't know how they're going to get through to the transfer window. They've got 6 weeks before they can do any transfers. That defence is a sieve. Ranieri is a damn good manager, but I don't think he's got the pieces to work with for 6 weeks. I don't know. I don't know if he's going to be able to have enough of an impact on these players to get them out of trouble. The amount of money already spent is backfiring. This is where the overinflated transfer market. This is where the calls for a transfer cap and a salary cap have to be brought forward. Other leagues do it exceptionally well, and other sports do it exceptionally well, and teams buy in. For some reason, football doesn't want to look at. They could be worse than Derby County. Derby County with 11 points. That record could go. If not Derby's record, some of Sunderland's poor point total was about 17 and 19 points. They're on the threat as well. We could see a record low points total in the Premier League. We could see Fulham post their worst ever Premier League totals as well. So it could be a club record or an actual or a league record. Yeah, they could be done before Christmas. They could be really done before Easter, definitely. Yeah, they risk basically relegating themselves long before the transfer window even opens. The next 6 weeks are going to be mental, and then the FA Cup comes along. And do Fulham take the FA Cup seriously to get some momentum, or they just go, we'll put a half-hearted effort in, hope we win a game? Because I don't know what they're going to do. I see the cup competition as a great way to get momentum and to get confidence, but I can see Fulham going, we're going to focus on league first, and they don't have enough. They just don't have enough. I see Sahiko as one of those owners who wants to make a profit rather than play some good football. He's already invested a lot of money into the club. He's obviously spent a lot of money on this failed bid for Wembley, and he was trying to force it through. And the FA were trying to force it through, and there was just so much resistance to it. We as fans weren't sold on what the FA were telling us, that grassroots football will get the boost. I look at grassroots football around here, and it's down to individual clubs. The FA aren't supporting grassroots football at all. They're telling them you have this amount of time to get your change rooms up to standard, otherwise you're automatically relegated from the league you're in. Well, you can apply for that grant, but you don't necessarily get the grant. They say you can get 70% off on improving your facilities if you apply for an FA grant. Yeah, apply. You don't necessarily receive. So the FA are picking and choosing what clubs they help at non-league level. Most non-league clubs are surviving hand to mouth. They can't afford these improvements. In League One and League Two, not a single club that I'm aware of is making a profit. And if it is, it's so minor. It's unbelievable. They need a very wealthy owner to back them up. Clubs are going bust. The FA doesn't do a fucking thing to help them. The fit and proper persons test. Look who owns Blackpool, Charlton, Blackburn. You look at the list of clubs that have been badly run or have had investigations into criminal activity. Half the league screwed. Championship, only 3 or 4 clubs make a profit each season. Most of them are left with racking debts that they can't afford. Premier League transfers are over. The transfer market is severely overinflated. Thank you very much, Neymar. You made the transfer market unsustainable. Yeah, no. Football is at a crossroads, and the money bubble has to go pretty quick. But yeah, I will see. I think Fulham, they might have to promote youth players before those youth players are fully ready. Give them a run out, rotate the squad. They don't have enough to stay up. They do not have enough. They are plummeting like a lead balloon, and they could have got Ranieri in quicker. He might have had a chain, had time to stamp his authority. He's got 6 weeks in which to fix this, and at least stay competitive until the transfer market. And even then, who do they bring in? It's going to be panic buying by Fulham. They've already spent a lot this summer. That's going to be panic buying, and I can see that being a great way to get relegated. Every club that got relegated last season, they changed their manager at least once. Some clubs multiple times, like Swansea and West Brom. So yeah, they're doing the how to get relegated manual very well. They're on chapter 2, sack your manager. Chapter 1, play crap. Chapter 2, sack your manager. Chapter 3, replace manager at inappropriate time in season. Yeah, they're on to chapter 3 of how to get relegated. They're going to do a very, very good job of trying to break Derby County's record. That's my personal opinion. I have friends who are Fulham fans, but I have limited sympathy for them because the owner's a dick. The owner's a crook. We know he's a crook. There's allegations of corruption against him due to his ownership of Fulham. And there's allegations of corruption to do with the bid to buy Wembley. So, yeah, there is something going on at that football club. But they're aiming to get relegated and get relegated badly. Yay. If they do break Derby County's record, I wouldn't be surprised. That record has stood for about a decade. That was a shocking season by a club that was so ill prepared to play in the Premier League after being out of the Premier League for so long. They just were so ill prepared. And they were rightly relegated. The fans stayed in good voice, but that Derby County side were just terribly prepared. But do I feel sympathy for Fulham fans? No. They're quite a wealthy fan base. And when they don't go to Fulham games, they go to Chelsea games anyway. That's Fulham fans are very upper class. They're very well off. They're basically Chelsea fans in denial who don't want to be associated with Chelsea publicly, but deep down they actually support Chelsea. Yeah, I don't know what they do, but Fulham fans aren't well liked by the football fans because they're basically Chelsea fans, and they are. When Fulham are doing crap, they all support Chelsea. They do. It's a known fact. When Fulham are doing crap, most Fulham fans will put on their Chelsea shirts and pretend they're Chelsea fans. How long will it take for the money bubble to break? Well, you missed about bubble, so you spelled Buble. That's all right. The bubble, I don't know, honestly. It could happen in the transfer window, January. Could happen in the summer. There's going to be a moment where the liquidity of football hits a brick wall because there's an infinite amount of money. There's not there's a finite amount of money in the world. How football has got through the I don't know how sport has. Some sports have really struggled in the last 10 years, but how football somehow has survived so well during the financial crisis of 2008 to now belies the fact that many clubs have gone by the wayside and have had to reform or go into administration. Rangers, Portsmouth, Gretna, a lot of them in Scotland, but a lot in England as well. Yeah, there is a massive, massive problem. Football as a sport is making ludicrous amounts of money. Working men and women in the street aren't. There is a finite amount of cash in the world. We could see an economic downturn again, like we saw about 10 years ago, very, very soon. Football didn't save money in the good times, it just spent and spent and spent and spent. Hard times come along, clubs are hitting the brick wall. There's a lot of debt in football. It takes a financial run on a financial market. We're seeing that in Argentina right now. The Argentinian financial market isn't great, and the Argentinian economy interest rates are in a bit of a bad state. If something happens in one of the major European or North American or Asian markets where there's a sudden slump or a crisis, football's in trouble. Football's in massive trouble should there be another run on the financial markets in the Northern Hemisphere. Football's in deep, deep trouble. Massive trouble. They're relying on credit. They're relying on debt. The transfer market is massively overinflated. Players' wages are massively overinflated. Agents' fees are unchecked. There will come a point where it crunches to a halt. Now, that could be economically, like we've seen 10 years ago, the financial crash, or it could be because of some kind of scandal which is bubbling. It could take a scandal to cause football to have issues. We've already seen match fixing scandals have had a massive impact on domestic leagues in Europe and Asia and South America and Africa. Corruption scandals have damaged the image and the finances. When we have a big scandal in a big league, we've seen it in Serie A, we've seen it in the Greek league, we've seen it in the Turkish league. If one of the big clubs, let's say in Spain, Germany, England, yeah, that could start a whole domino effect. And there are allegations against a lot of clubs over tax affairs, corruption. We could see a massive domino effect that hasn't been seen for a while, and it could be a good thing for football long term, but in the short term, many clubs will go out of business and the sport will be massively affected. And I think there has to be a salary cap. There has to be a transfer cap in place, a spending cap. There has to be some kind of cost effective cap policy that other sports have very effectively implemented over the years to keep costs and give cost certainty. Because at the moment, costs are spiraling out of control for a lot of clubs and are unsustainable for many. How long will it take? I don't know. It will happen. It will happen. Every other industrial market and trade market has had a point where the bubbles burst and they've had to start again. Boom and bust cycle. Football should not be immune from that. Other sports have actually struggled over the last decade or so financially and not as financially well off and haven't had the massive growth football has. We could look at the Olympic movement and some of the Olympics having to cost a lot of money to build the stadiums when there's massive social issues. Rugby league hasn't necessarily had the boost it should have had when it was, reaching its peak in the 90s and the early 2000s. That sort of regressed a little bit. Some rugby league clubs have had financial issues that have affected a a sport that has lesser players and lesser fan base, so it affects it more, even though it's a global sport. Some rugby union clubs have had financial difficulties. Football, I don't know how it's stayed so insular, but that money's got to run out. I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of that money's on bad credit, but there will be some scandal involving corruption at club level. Sod FIFA, sod UEFA, we're talking about club level where we know this financial fair play scandal involving Man City and PSG is just the tip of the iceberg. There's something far more sinister with corruption in club football taking place. When that breaks, we could see the dominoes start to fall, but at the same time, we don't know what's going to happen. It's a subjective look at it. We just don't know what's going to happen when it comes to finances in the future. Predicting is exceptionally difficult. That's why I don't try and do it. I can preview things and say this is the style of play that this team play. This is the style of play this team play. These are the injuries they've got. This is the squads they can select from. Yeah, I can do a preview of a match or a preview of a tournament. I cannot predict a scoreline, and I cannot predict when the money bubble will burst. But when it does, or when there's a corruption scandal, which we know there is corruption investigations into big clubs in this country, when that breaks and a club is thrown out of the football league or is given administration and dot points, that's when the dominoes fall. Especially if it's a massive club like a Man City, a Man United, a Chelsea. One of those clubs would have a massive scandal that was involving points deductions, fines, and relegation. The dominoes would start falling across European football, and then have a wider effect globally. And yeah, that could turn fans off big time. We're already seeing falling attendances in some leagues in Europe because of uncompetitive leagues or corruption scandals. Yeah, we could see that in England massively, and Spain and Germany. If one of those three big leagues was to have a massive corruption scandal that led to teams being thrown out, relegated, banned from competition, heavily fined, that could have a massive ripple effect for years to come, and could expose a lot more scandal that we were not aware of before. So yeah, that's something we definitely need to consider that could happen and will happen. It's just when, and I can't predict that. But it's an interesting question. I've raised it. The money bubble has to break soon, right? Because we've seen the debt crisis that was caused with bad credit in 2008. Now, I know if you're a bit younger and you're not quite up to speed with the economic and political side of what happened in 2007, 2008, 2009 with the subprime mortgage failure and giving loans to people that couldn't afford to pay them back. Football's in that same situation with unsustainable debt, unsustainable cash flows, and they're running the risk of alienating their fans anyway, the main hardcore fans, which is reliant on the stadiums being full of people. Empty stadiums are really shit for TV. As Man City found out, they play fake noise to make it seem like the stadium is more full than it actually is. And unsustainable growth patterns whereby the amount of money being spent is not necessarily being brought back in revenues by some clubs. So the owners who are exceptionally wealthy just plug the gaps by breaching financial fair play, which is what you see with Man City and PSG and other clubs in Europe. So yeah, the financial system of football is creaking badly, and it will break at some point. It has to. Every other boom and bust cycle has taken place in a variety of industries and variety of countries economically. It will happen in football. The current financial systems in football and other sports as well are not sustainable long term. They're just not sustainable. If you're pricing fans out of grounds and the base of the sport, so the lower leagues, is basically broke, you cannot prop up the top league. If the money is not filtering down, it has to come from the bottom. If there's no money in the bottom and you take the base out, the roof collapses. It's plain and simple. Because League One, League Two, and some clubs in the Championship are basically broke because the non-league has no money. You take that support structure away from the Premier League and the top clubs in the Championship, the whole thing falls in. You cannot have a roof and a pinnacle of a building or an organisation or a pyramid without the base layers being there first. The base layers get so weak, the top level collapses. This is why the Super League idea won't work, because there's no base supporting it. There's no league structure below supporting it. It will fail. And they're being driven by greed, and it's unsustainable. So I hope they go and do this Super League stuff, because it will destroy the sport, and the sport will have to start again from scratch. It's the only way for football to learn, is to watch it itself destroy it, rip itself to pieces. Other sports can then fill that void magically. And we are seeing some clubs losing fans. Fans are turning off. They're not interested anymore. They're getting bored of it. Price of the game. They're tuning into other sports that are cheaper and more accessible. That's what I'm seeing. That's what I'm seeing. And the amount of protests against poor ownership and ticket prices and corruption, yeah, they're having an effect slowly but surely. The EFL, the Premier League, and the FA have to wake up and smell the music that the fan base is not happy, and they're your bread and butter customers. Solve the TV deals abroad and the merchandise you sell abroad. If you can't keep your base customers, your hardcore customers happy, that you know are going to come back season upon season because they regularly support the club, they've always supported the club their entire life. They're not just journeyman fans; they are hardcore. You can't keep them happy. The sport dies. Plain and simple. Sport without fans is not sport. It's just commercialism. It's just an advertising exercise. Then, if you ain't got no fans in the stadium, it's crap. Players thrive off atmosphere. And we're seeing this in La Liga with the players going, we're on the fan side. We think taking regular season games to North America to play is wrong. And they're taking a stand. And so I can see, again, dominoes falling with that. They do go on strike, which they are threatening to do. And the Liga is determined to forge ahead with its political game because it's all Catalan sides playing. It's Girona and Barcelona playing. The fans don't want it. The players don't want it, but the league does, and it risks a massive break within the sport, and that could also lead to the dominoes to fall when the players go on strike, and it affects European football, be it Champions League, Europa League, international break. They go on strike. Does that mean who do they? Does that mean all Spanish players around the world go on strike? Because that would cripple a lot of clubs. If all the Spanish players down tools say, I'm not playing, I'm standing alongside my playing brethren. Does that mean leagues step in and sanction clubs and players for going on strike? They've got to be very, very careful how they handle this because it could lead to wildcat strikes in leagues all around Europe, all around South America, where they go, nah, we're not playing. It will take something like that for football to finally change. It's getting too greedy now. Football is getting far too greedy now. Other sports are less greedy and they're seen in more respect. Their athletes are seen in a higher regard of respect because they're more down to earth, they're paid less, they're more community involved. When a football player gets involved in the community, the press have to follow him around, you see. He has to be seen to be in the community, whereas a rugby union, rugby league player, they just do their community work. They don't have the cameras in their face. They go around the local rugby league club, the local rugby union club, the local ice hockey team. They give the coaching sessions. They have the chats. They see what charity donations are all about. They do the charity work. They don't have the cameras in their face. They don't have to pretend to care because they care, because they're down to earth. Football has this obscene bubble where they seem to be better than everyone. They have this superiority complex, and really, a lot of them can't survive in the real world because they don't live in the real world. Hence why a lot of players post-retirement end up in addiction, wasting all their money. They end up broke, homeless, dead, quite young, getting arrested for various offences. We see a lot of football. We see it less in rugby league than rugby union. We see more of their players when they do retire, going to other jobs, finding a way to live in normal society because they're down to earth people. They're not overpaid because there's less money in those sports. There's not many $1 million contracts and £1 million contracts being thrown around. They're on decent money, but that's it. Decent money. They're not on massive money. They're significantly underpaid for the jobs that they do, which are very, very physical. Football, they dive a lot. They pretend to be injured. Rugby players and ice hockey players, they play injured. You look at the average salaries for players. Okay, basketball players in the NBA are the most paid in the world, highest paid athletes in the world because of LeBron James. He's put that average even higher. Premier League football players, again, just top level elite football players in Europe, massively overpaid. Rugby players, both league and union, and ice hockey players, you look at what they're paid. Whoa, so much less, especially if you're looking on a European level. I know the NHL is a different kettle of fish, but if you look at the European level, where ice hockey is the second most popular sport in Europe, it is. If you look at all the European nations, ice hockey is the second most popular sport. You look on average what they are paid at the top leagues in Europe. That includes the elite league here in the UK. Look at their wages. Compare that to an elite level football player. It's like that. Football most popular sport, ice hockey second most popular sport in Europe. So we're putting both codes of rugby as the third most popular team sport, which it is. Look how much they pay. Top level. There is no comparison. Football players massively overpaid. The rugby code players, both union and league, ice hockey players, they play hurt a lot of the time. You will see ice hockey players playing with broken ribs. You'll see rugby players playing with cheek fractures, fractured wrists, broken fingers, broken noses, muscular injuries. You'll see them play with shoulder injuries when they shouldn't. You'll see them play with back injuries when they shouldn't. They really put their bodies on the line. They are paid a hell of a lot less for far more dangerous sports they compete in. Football players, they can earn £7 million a year doing nothing on the bench. So there comes that debate over wages there. We are seeing now with Daniel Sturridge, he's under investigation for not paying his taxes and a bit of corruption, isn't he? So that's come out in the papers that he's under investigation for tax dodging, which can have some serious consequences as well. A lot of football players, are having their tax affairs looked at in the last couple of years, and a lot of them have been found guilty, and a lot of them seem to get away with going to prison by just going, I'll pay the fine. If you or me do that, we go to prison for tax fraud. They seem to get away with it because they can afford a good lawyer. It's not a good image for football when the players are having these tax allegations against them. It doesn't look good. It looks really, really bad, especially at a time when the average working man is earning less in real terms now than 10, 12 years ago. Less money in the pocket, less food on the table, struggling to get by. Football players earning so much, it doesn't look good. It's a really poor image for the sport to have, and it keeps cropping up every few months. And there's another player with some tax allegations against him of tax fraud, failure to pay, tax evasion, tax avoidance, other corrupt dealings as well with their sponsors, trying to get around sponsorship rules and other laws there. And third party, there's a whole variety of things going on. And they seem like they are politicians. They like to be seen rather than actually them wanting to be seen. It's a PR stunt. There are some football players who are generally involved in the local communities, who generally do the charity work and the charity foundations without the cameras in their face, and they do the hard work. But you always see that video camera. So you always see them getting filmed when they're doing their charity work. Whereas you look at rugby union, ice hockey, rugby league, doesn't matter what level they play at, if there is a charitable drive, I've seen this with my local ice hockey club here in the UK. Yeah, they are actively involved. And yeah, fans may have a camera and the local press may take photographs. So, look, this is a charitable thing. Yeah, it's fine. But after that photograph, they will go out with the buckets. They will go out if the player is injured at the match night door and be part of the fundraising team. The players and the supporters club will go round the rink going, we're raising funds tonight for this charity. Do you mind giving to the Armed Forces charity, Blood Cancer charity? I think one they're looking at this season with my local hockey team is the local epilepsy charity, and I've got friends with epilepsy, so yes, I'm happy giving you money there. And when the players are not playing, they are in the club shop helping out. They are in the rink if they're injured with the buckets. Some of the ex-players get involved as well. This is why I like watching ice hockey, because they don't get the recognition they deserve. They don't get the media coverage, for one. They're paid significantly less. Well, when I say significantly, they're paid a drop in the ocean compared to what a football player's played on an average wage in the Premier League. To be a crap player, to be a good player in ice hockey, you're getting paid a crap player's wage in football. Basically, what I'm getting at here. Some of the injuries I've seen in ice hockey, I've seen some really nasty headshots. I've seen some broken legs, broken arms. I've seen pucks to face. I've seen some nasty neck injuries. I've seen players just laid out, concussed. And I know concussion protocols are changing, but when I was younger, I saw one of the worst line brawls where all the players on the ice decided to kick the shit out of each other. We had 2 broken arms, a broken shoulder, a dislocated jaw, and 2 concussions between all those players. There were a lot of injuries, a lot of suspensions, a lot of fines. And ice hockey is one of those sports that has struggled financially since 2008. A lot of teams have hit financial problems and have either gone out of business or have had to be saved at the last minute. We've seen it again this season as well. We saw it last season. We saw it the season before. Football, for some reason, going back to the money bubble, how they have been making so much money when other leagues and sports have really struggled over the last decade is obscene. Really obscene. But this is why I like ice hockey. This is why I like rugby league. This is why I like rugby union to a point. It's because they are paid a hell of a lot less, and some of the injuries they sustain, it's brutal. It is brutal, and I do have a lot of respect, considering that I have actually played rugby at amateur level at my local rugby club, and I've gone through the concussions and the broken ankles and the pulled muscles and the broken nose and the dislocated shoulder. I've gone through. That's one season. I've gone through that, and I know what a rugby player goes through when they play. I may not be the biggest, but I know what it feels like to week in, week out, put the boots on. No, you're not 100% fit. You've got a shoulder injury, you've got a neck injury, you've got a muscular injury, you've got a dodgy ankle, and to go out and to do it all again, I've blown both my knees out. My knees are wrecked because of my playing rugby. I still was willing to put all that on, and to be fair, at amateur level, you're not getting paid. You're paying to play. That's the obscenity of it. You're not getting paid. You're having to pay to play. You don't get that in football. A lot of the players do like to throw themselves, dive, simulate. Rugby, you're hurt. You play hurt. I played injured for most of the season. I played on one leg for half the season. I had fun doing it, but I'm feeling my quad a lot. I have issues with my quad. I have issues with my groin. I have issues with my neck, my shoulder. Sometimes my breathing gets screwed up with my nose getting blocked a lot more because it's broken. I have issues with my jaw; it dislocates itself. I have issues with my spine, my ankle. I've had issues going over my left ankle hasn't fully healed properly. It's been years now. I still have a weakness in my tendons there. Both my knees are ruined. I've had issues with both my wrists, one of my elbows. That's from one season. Imagine doing that for 20 years as a player. I have a lot of respect for elite level rugby union, rugby league players. I really do. Um, one of my mates, he played for another team. One of our rivals. I went in for a tackle. I broke his collarbone. He's never played since. His health has been affected. So yeah, I do have a sympathy for the physical sports. I really do. They don't get paid enough. Football has taken a lot of the money away from these sports by its greed. Had football taken less money at these TV deals, we may have seen more money available for rugby union, for rugby league, for ice hockey in TV deals that could have benefited those sports. Um, oh yeah, numbing jabs. I mean, we've got to be careful with what we as are putting in our systems as painkillers because some are wider controlled. Now, I was playing at low level, but I was called up by the senior first team that do play semi-professional level. So I would have actually got paid to if I was sat on the bench or played that day. Um, but I was basically hobbling around on one leg, and then their coach saw me in a training session, literally putting a shift in, but you could tell that I was just injured. He said, "No, this guy is not playing because if he aggravates that, he's done. He could be crippled." So I had 2 weeks off. 2 weeks, didn't play for 2 weeks. I pulled my calf muscle and my thigh muscle. I'd ripped my groin, and I was trying to hobble around in a training session in midwinter. And the coach was like, "Yeah, no, we want him to play because he's been putting a shift in, but looking at him, how is he playing?" That kind of thing. So I completely understand having these mind-numbing jabs with arm and legs. And once you get below the championship level, when you get below that rugby union, the money isn't there. And part of that is to do with the greed of football taking a lot of those TV rights and TV time away from union, away from league, away from ice hockey, away from cricket. Sold itself the devil, hasn't it, with Sky? But other sports could have benefited from some of that TV money over the last decade, and it's gone to football. And football is harming other sports as well. The greed of football is actually harming other sports. Because rugby union, rugby league, ice hockey, they are having some of these things called concussion lawsuits and CTE and things like that, and they get expensive when you have to pay money to plaintiffs. We've seen it with the NFL, we're seeing it with the NHL, they are agreeing to a payout settlement. Head injuries are a big thing right now and a big discussion point. I've had a few concussions. I can tell you now it's not fun. I've been knocked out twice in the same game, so protocols have changed since I last played almost a decade ago, but the physical injuries that you sustain go with you. I have had a fair few blows to the head, and it has affected me health wise. Yeah, totally. My mental health has been a struggle at times. I have had issues with after a concussion with being a bit depressed and a bit aggy and a bit not with it and not feeling great. And yeah, my physical health was wrecked with all the injuries that I had, and that's just from one full season. That's not including my youth level playing at school. I had a fair few injuries there as well. You do carry them through. It's very rare that a player goes through an entire career without having at least one little niggle or one little layoff. The brutality of it is catches up with you. And I know rugby union are going through this limiting amount of time players play at elite level. I wouldn't say that's necessarily the solution. I think it's getting the pro players to tackle properly. You're taught to tackle low in school and to hit here to your knees. Most players try to smash your head off or chop tackle you below the knees. And also their tackle technique is shocking. They're getting the head in the wrong position. So they're getting themselves like you look at what's his name, Lee Halfpenny. He can't tackle to save his life. He just puts his body in the way and gets knocked out all the time. His head position is terrible. Good goal kicker, good ball runner. Tackling, I would run at him all day because he's going to knock himself out. Lee Halfpenny is how you should not tackle. He's a smaller guy, so he's got to make up for it with technique. He has no technique. He's basically trying to kill himself. That's all I can think of. Other than that, he's got no tackle technique. George North, big bloke, no tackle technique. He gets himself in bad positions all the time with his body positioning when he's being tackled or when he's making a tackle, knocks himself out. I think it's a Welsh thing. But then you look at some of the other players, they've got their tackle technique is absolutely shocking. Dylan Hartley just I don't know if he has any brains left. His technique is shocking. Um, there are some players who cannot tackle properly. There are other players who go in and are going high or going too low and are injuring the opposition player as well. What's happened between tackling here and the knees? All you got to do is tackle below the neck, between the knees. You got to chop them in half. Are they fearing the offload? In that case, you get one guy to wrap the upper body and one guy to wrap the lower body. The offload can't take place. The standard choke tackle, which works very, very well. We were taught at school to hit between there and there. It's nice and soft. He will fall over. Both league and union, you smash him in the middle, aim for the ball, dislodge the ball. That's all goal is to dislodge the ball. The amount of people who do not tackle properly in the professional game is the problem. It's not the kids not tackling properly, it's the adults. They're not teaching them to scrum properly, they're teaching them how to collapse scrums and wheel in, which is dangerous for your neck. These are professional level. This is where the issues are. All these parents going, I don't want my kids playing rugby. It's not the kids knocking themselves out. There's the occasional kid getting severely injured, but for the most part, they're actually all right. It's the senior players at professional level being properly taught when scrum coaching. So they're driving straight and trying to hook the ball. They're teaching the scrum to wheel, to bore in. They're also telling the scrum half to feed it crooked, which is against the rules, but no referee ever wants to ping them. Ping them. Seriously. Scrummaging is a mess. The last decade or so, coaches have basically told their players to cheat at the scrum to the point where it's actually dangerous for themselves and the opposition. The amount of front row forwards who've got debilitating neck injuries and shoulder problems is disgusting. It's because scrum coaches are teaching their front row to scrum illegally and dangerously. Team tackle, 2-3 players in a tackle, you bring them down. Look at rugby league. Yeah, they still get an offload out, but it's about trying to restrict that free arm. All you got to do is aim for the ball when you hit up. They're not going to offload. They're going to be shit. I've got to protect this. Bang. Good shoulder, good forearm, into the ball, dislodges it. It's all about ball retention, isn't it, at the end of the day? If you ain't got a ball to retain, you're going to lose possession. Scrummaging is a joke. Scrum halves, feed it straight, let the hookers hook. That, you know what that does? It stops the scrum wheeling. It stops the scrum boring in, damaging nets because they're driving straight. It comes down to hook it. You've got to stop, and both sides have got to hook it. Simple as fact. 2003, that World Cup was the best World Cup for scrummaging. Since 2003, 2004, scrummaging has been a disgrace. The amount of props and hookers who've had to retire because their necks are ruined because they've been badly coached at senior level. It is a disgrace. It has to end. But World Rugby doesn't ping them. It's a penalty. It's like, no, you teach them to scrum straight. You tell the scrum half. You tell the scrum half. You put it in straight or you're getting binned. Simple. They will learn very quickly if they're getting sent off for repeated scrum infringements. But hey, you see 1-2 calls a game and the referee doesn't call it. And it's a joke. Because when you put it in wonky, the opposition hooker can't hook the ball, so they have to drive, which puts pressure on the hooking team because they're just given the ball. It wheels, pressure's put on the neck, an injury happens, be it from the driving team or the defending team. It's just a way to destroy your neck and give you permanent neck damage that you can never recover from, that could paralyze. Plain and simple, done. So simple, but they want to have every advantage now. It's not the size of the players, it's the technique. It is a shocker. This is why the NFL has so many issues with players getting concussions and neck injuries, because they cannot tackle to save their lives. You watch them, they're going in helmet first. They try to outlaw that. No, you can still hit with the helmet. You just can't hit him on the head with the helmet. You can hit him in the knee with the helmet. You can lead with your helmet, which is basically a way to break your neck. But hey, you can also blow out the guy's knee. But watch the NFL, they have no tackle technique. It's disgusting. It's just a way to kill themselves. So what's the same with the CFL, which is the Canadian version of NFL. They cannot tackle properly. If you're worried about offloads, aim for the ball when you tackle. Try and aim for the ball when you tackle. Knock it out in any way you can. It nullifies the offload. Rugby league's different, but again, you're aiming for that ball carrying arm. Most forwards will go in with a ball carrying arm, try and offload, and they'll keep an arm free. If you can wrap up that ball arm, they can't offload it. It's plain and simple. It's all about hitting in the middle. You'll dislodge the ball. That's where the ball's going to be held at the end of the day. If you start doing that more and more often, they're going to wrap the ball up like that. They're going to try and turn and present the ball. No offload, slows the game down, means the defence can get up. It's plain and simple. Tackle technique, stops offloads. Fucking plain and simple. Surprised they teach him trying to take the head off, because you see a guy coming high, he's going to duck, he's going to offload it. hit him in the middle, you can't really offload it as easily. It's plain and simple. It's going to make it a very awkward offload. It's meaning the player's going to be more likely to want to hold on to the ball to protect it, to make sure it's worth a safe carry. It's plain and simple, but the professional level, they just seem to want to kill each other. And that is the problem. So the amount of games played is the tackle technique and the scrummaging technique is killing players long term. So well done, Rugby Union. You've allowed bad habits to become dangerous because World Rugby, formerly the IRB, didn't really watch the scrum area, didn't watch the tackle area until it was too late. So that is on the governance side. That's where governance has failed of worldwide sport, is they allow bad habits from some professional players to become so widespread within the game that now it's too late to take action. And now players are going, oh, we've been allowed to do this for years. No, you haven't. You've just been allowed to get away with it for 10 years because the governance of the sport is so shit, plain and simple. I do not understand why coaches are trying to get their players to kill the opposition with bad scrummaging and bad tackle technique. This is down to coaching as well. This is not just down to players. This is down to coaching and what the coaches do in training. This is why we're getting players so badly injured in training for England and Wales and Italy or France. Look at the injury lists for some of these international sides in their training camps. England are renowned for it. Eddie Jones, that means he is coaching his players to tackle badly, which means they're resulting in injuries. He's a front row forward by trade. He should teach them how to scrum pissing properly because when he was playing, they did. Now, not so much. Not so much. You want to wheel the scrum now so you get an advantage. You want to get the referee. No, you want to scrum straight because at the end of the day, you're going to kill yourself. The sooner players realise they're killing themselves or risking serious injury by getting these lazy techniques of boring in, not driving straight, not keeping good structures there. But well, rugby is overcomplicated it with the ruling now of touch, engage, whatever. When I was playing youth level and watching as a kid, very simple instructions. Scrums weren't constantly reset. They weren't constantly collapsing. You could play on a bog of a pitch and the scrum wouldn't collapse. Now, on these beautiful surfaces, they keep going down, keep going down, keep going down. It's a load of bollocks because they can't scrum properly. It infuriates me every time I see an international test scrum. I know it's going to be reset at least twice because the referees should say, right, you're scrumming straight, right, you're boring in, you're off. Right, you're dropping the knee, you're not taking the hit, you're off. Send them off, straight up. If we have to go to uncontested scrums, it will embarrass the players so much they do it properly. The fact they can't remember doing it properly because they've never been trained properly since the age of 16, it's down to coaching and the coach within the sport. They need to show videos of post-2000 or pre-2004 of proper scrummaging and proper scrummaging technique. Go, that's how it should be done. And I want to see officials in the World Cup next year binning players for not feeding the scrum straight, the scrum off. Send him off. Just get him off. You'll learn soon enough. If don't want to prop straight, drive straight, get him off. Beat him straight up. Sod giving warnings now because this is a safety issue. Because if you feed it wonky, that means the opposition scrum is going to have to drive earlier. You're going to you're going to be hooking it. You're just going to do it. It's just a mess. So, but that's my rant on rugby union. Rugby league has got its own issues, but that's my rant on rugby union. I say bring back fighting because that's kind of fun because that sorts out some of the eye gouging and the choke tackles on the floor. Let them fight again. It's more fun. I know it's naughty, but let them fight. Fans love it. I love it. And guess what? The game was actually cleaner when you were allowed to have brawls on the pitch. There were less dirty tackles, I think you'll find, and the game was played properly. They thought, no, you can't throw punches anymore. It's bringing the game into disrepute. Well, bad tackle technique is bringing the game into disrepute because it's killing players. Rucking, right, how long does a player have before he has to place the ball and let go? I see many players still hold on to the ball with their hand and then place it. When I was at youth level, I was told, place the ball, protect yourself, get out of there, let the players rock for it. You've got to present the ball and let go. Players at international level, they seem to be holding on to it, but holding an arm out. No, you've got to put that ball and let go. So the ruck area has not been properly refereed on the tackle player releasing the ball. How can some players get out of there when they make a tackle? They're buried. Common sense, please, by referees. If the player who's tackled is still being held by the other player because he's trapped, is that stopping the ball coming out? Is that stopping the ball being hooked back? No. Also, allow them to stamp with their feet. It makes sure that if you are the tackling player, you let go pretty quickly. You get out of there because you're going to get a lot of studs in your head. I think you'll find old school rucking. Yeah. Some of those pansy backs, and I was an outside back, but some of those pansy backs who didn't like doing the ruck in the morning, they would stay out and they would stay in the defensive line. And you could tell they would like ruck in the morning. Holding on, they They've now outlawed stamping on players. I kind of liked that back in the day because it was an idea. Your scrum half would actually give you, the tackle player, a little tap saying, I'm coming in to hand the ball now, move your arms out of the way. It'd also give you an idea to actually, it would clear the ruck out very quickly. You had less players holding onto the ball and less players holding on in the tackle. Player safety issue, yeah, but a couple of taps with the foot, you're going to get out of there. You ain't going to don't want to do that for 80 minutes because you're going to have no face left. You're going to have holes in your arm. It actually meant there were less ruck and maul penalties because players on the floor were getting trod on. They would get out of there. You had to be sensible with your feet, but getting stamped on a few times, you ain't going to do that for 80 minutes if you're a flanker or an outside centre. You're going to want to not do that for 80 minutes because you'll be more injured. And so there were less penalties on the floor because players actually got out of the way quicker because they weren't willing to get stamped on, plain and simple. They weren't willing to get broken ribs and concussions. They were willing to get out of there because they knew they weren't going to be stamped on. Now it's more of a wrestle. There's more arms and knees going in. Players are holding on more. They're getting concussed more. Seriously, if you look at it, if you were the tackling player and you got stamped on once with a guy trying to hack you out the way to rock the ball out, next time you tackle, you're getting out there quicker. You don't want to be on the floor because you know you're going to get another boot to the head or another boot to the arm, and it's going to hurt. It's going to hurt if you do it properly. A couple of gentle taps with your foot, let the player know you're there. You tend to, it's common sense. There were some players who just went in and just stamped on players' heads, and we don't want that. But for the most part, when you're rucking the ball out and you're using your feet, you can't use your hands. Remember, you've got to use your feet. If someone's reaching in, holding on the ball, they're going to have some broken fingers. They ain't going to want to do it for a whole match when their hands got chunks out of it. It's going to hurt. And you noticed there were less penalties for slow ball because it was a proper ruck. You had players going in and driving properly. Now it's dive on the ball. You've got to support your weight. Forehand, if you were not supporting your weight, you got back of your hand stamped on. You ain't going to want to do that all day because when you can't grip a ball, you're no good. If you can't tackle because your hand's all mangled, you're no good. So many players had good rucking technique back in the day to avoid being caught on the floor because they knew it would bloody hurt when they got stamped on. Not saying all players actually stamped, but obviously can't stamp on heads. But yeah, they used to allow proper rucking with the feet. They don't now because too many players have become pansies because they're willing to lie there. Because they, again, bad habits. Player willing to lie there. He knows he's not going to get stamped on because the guy who actually touched him, even gently, is going to get a yellow card. They play for the penalty. They slow the rucking ball down illegally, but they can stay there without getting rucked out the way. Because rucking technique has changed since I last played, and changed, and not in a good way. Not in a good way. And if you're the tackle player, they've got to release the ball quicker. They've got to place the ball and move their arms away. Now they're placing the ball and they're keeping the hand on the ball, keep the hand on the ball, keep the hand on the ball. They're making it easier for the scrum half. It's less of a competition with the ruck, counter ruck. I was always taught as a youth player, and even 8-9 years ago when I was playing, you place the ball, you move your hands away. You obviously lie yourself in a very protected position, but you've got to allow the opposition to compete. That's written into the laws of the game. But I'm seeing a lot of top-level professionals, both hands on the ball, one hand on the ball. They're going to place it on the ground. They're popping it as a pop pass off the ground, which I believe is against the rules, but no referee's picking up on. So they need to, yes, definitely, a lot of referees need to reread the rule book and reinverse themselves with the laws of the game because the ruck and maul is becoming a little bit of a joke. Back in the day, when you could ruck properly, you actually had less penalties at ruck time because less players were holding onto the ball because they knew they were going to get flattened, basically. And to do that for 80 minutes, it does hurt a lot. And yeah, it was a thing. Proper rucking. You didn't have to see dangerous stamping. You just see them step over, give the defending player who's lying on the wall just a little grate with your studs, gentle one, not heavy, but let him know that, hey, look, you're going to get this all day. If you're going to keep lying there for 80 minutes, you are going to end up black and blue. And we haven't done anything wrong. And that's when it was a different style of forward game. And that's why you see lots of forwards with older forwards with broken noses like that, cauliflower ears, scars on their faces, because they laid there and they were willing to take a couple of stamps before they realised, I actually want to get out of here. You see some of the professionals now, less scarring on the face, less scarring on the arms and the hands, because now they're more protected in the ruck and the maul because they just call a penalty all the time. Some referees are too quick to call it, some are too slow, but bring back old school rucking, you would find players are less likely to want to stay on the floor for a long periods of time in a ruck and a maul. They want to get out of the way. Firstly, though, because if they get back on their feet and they can get involved in the ruck and maul themselves, they're benefiting their side. Also, if they go into the passing line, they can benefit their side when the next pass comes out, when the ball is free. You just lie on the floor. You're not helping your side much, really, because that means you have less player in defence and one less player in attack. So, yeah, I think if they were to bring back old school rucking, it might actually encourage players to get off the floor quicker to avoid getting stamped on and get into that back line or get into that defensive line or get into the attacking format or get back into, get on your feet and help ruck or maul the ball out. You'll see the referee on his whistle a lot less, unless it's a really egregious foul play where the guy has actually physically stamped on some guy's head. But we had that back then. We still have it now. You're still going to have that dirty player. But for the most part, when you had the rucking where you could use your feet more, less penalties because the players on the floor were less willing to hold on to the ball or hold on as a tackler and not release. They were willing to get out a lot quicker and get back on their feet, which led to what blindside and open side flankers are doing. Back row forwards, they tackle, they release quickly, they're back on their feet competing for the ball. That's why that position evolved. And that's why players like Neil Back, for example, and a very young, I would say, Richie McCaw got to the forwards because they were that little bit quicker and smaller. They were willing to tackle, release, and get back and be competitive because they didn't want to stand on the floor getting crushed. They were like, I'm better if I'm back on my feet. And they were always told to get back up quick and hoover up the loose ball. That's where England having problems at the breakdown because of the change in the style of game where rucking has changed now. Players just lie there. They don't have to. They have to move, but they don't really feel the need to because they're not getting a boot hitting them in the hip or the armpit or the head to say get out of the way. Even from your own teammates, the scrum half used to literally just get his foot, give a couple of taps to the player, go move. I want to get the ball out. You would know that's your scrum half. You move your body, ball comes out. Now they're just lying there, going, but look, I'm being held in rep. Well, 10 years ago, a player would move in that situation because he's having about 6 or 7 size 12 plus boots hitting him on the way through on the ruck. He would get out the way pretty quick. That's my argument from it on there, but old school when it comes to rucking and mauling and scrumming, I believe, yeah, if you do it properly, you're less likely to get injured. A lot of players now are not doing it properly. And the way the game has evolved, I think you need to bring back some of the old school rucking, keep it simple. They can ruck old school ways if they can clear the ball. You've got to look at footage of rucks and mauls in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s. So the end of the amateur, early professional era, you would see a lot less penalties on the floor. If you were to rewatch a game from 95, 99, 2003 World Cups, you'll see a lot more use of the feet in the ruck to get the ball free, play the ball back to the scrum half, get players cleared out, just give them a little grate with your studs. Just that once or twice, they stop lying there. That player will stop lying there. He will move. You'll see less penalties for slow breakdown, slowing the ball down, less penalties for holding on in the tackle and on the ball. And the game was actually quicker in that sense at the breakdown. Now it's just a mess at scrum time. It's a mess at line-out time. It's a mess at ruck time because the referees and the rules of the game have said, you can't use your feet anymore. No, yeah, use your feet. That was part. I was always told to use my feet. It got rid of the lump of lard on the floor. I was always told to tackle properly because it would wrap the ball up to stop an offload and it could dislodge it. And it cuts the player in half. Plain and simple, get your shoulder in right. It's nice and soft. Tackling a prop, as I was always told. As a winger, you should never be afraid of tackling a big fat prop because he ain't got the pace. He's just got the mass. If you get him in the right place, he ain't going to run you over. Take him out the knees to the gut, and he will go over you, and he'll bend double. And he's nice and soft. Now, because props are now all muscle now, you can't tackle in the soft bit. But they're just trying to go for this super smash. They all think they're Brian, the chiropractor Lima, every tackle. The reason why Brian Lima was very, very good at what he did is because he kept you in the right place. Occasionally you'll get it wrong, but Brian Lima, as a rugby player, just type in Brian the chiropractor Lima on YouTube and you'll see a player who could hit hard and legally occasionally got it wrong. The reason why he was so good, tackle technique. We're seeing players now think they're Brian Lima, but they're half a foot taller than Brian Lima because they're 6'5" and 19 stone, when Brian Lima was about 6 foot, 5'11", and about 13 stone, trying to do the same type of tackle, and they just do not get the technique right. They injure themselves, they injure the opposition. That's the difference. It's tackle technique. But enough of me ranting on about the past of rugby, because I know I love it. If they simplified the game at the breakdown, allowed the use of the feet again a little bit. Yes, there is a player safety issue, but again, if the player's lying there, he deserves to be stamped on. They constantly keep these southern law variations. The scrums become a mess. The line-outs become a bit of a mess when it comes to the maul. The rucks become a bit of a mess. I say bring back simple rules. You've got to drive straight in the scrum. If you're boring in, you're off. The scrum half has got to feed straight like they used to. They don't do that anymore. They're pinching more and more now. It's going at like a 70-degree angle. That's unacceptable. That's got to change. They've got to be strict from the scrum. Get them scrumming properly, like scrumming straight, driving straight. Both hookers having to hook the ball. The scrum half putting the ball in straight. You'll see less injuries at scrum, less reset scrums because they have to focus on keeping it up. Secondly, at ruck time, let them use the feet again, like they used to until about a couple of years ago. Deliberate stamping when you're aiming for a head or you do more than a couple of, it's really egregious and it is deliberate foul play, yeah. But guess what? It stops players lying there in the way, both the attacking and defending side, so the ball can come out and be competitive for both sides because they have to have a competition on the floor. And you'll see very quickly the referee go, that competition's over, allow them to win it. No, that is not a ruck. That is just players lying there and the referee not wanting to referee the game properly. And the tackle technique is the upper level professionals who are letting down the kids because they're tackling badly. Lee Halfpenny cannot tackle to save his life. I could run at him and knock him out. And I'm actually smaller in weight wise than Lee Halfpenny. I'm taller than him, but I'm smaller in weight. He gets his head in one position constantly because he has no tackle technique because he's been badly coached for years by his coaches. So that comes down to Warren Gatland, his national coach, failing. And the tackle defence coach, Sean Edwards. Sean Edwards should know better because he played rugby league, which is a brutal game. Tackle technique from the Welsh players is appalling. Welsh international players, their tackle technique really worries me long term. They're very talented with the ball, but tackling, they just like getting themselves knocked out. Liam Williams, he's been knocked out a few times, and he's a big lad. I've seen Cuthbert, he's knocked himself out with poor tackle technique. Halfpenny, any of the back three, any player that plays outside centre to fullback, for example, for Wales, they cannot tackle to save their lives properly. Their tackle technique is shoddy. It is appalling. It is dangerous. They're a team that I highlight regularly having poor tackle technique, but they're not the only ones. There are some England players, there's some French players, there's some Italians, a couple of Italians who had some really there was some really bad concussions for some Italians in the Six Nations. Again, tackle technique, really not getting it right at all. Then you have it's just so there's too many things wrong with rugby union. They need to get the simple things right, and they're not. They're overcomplicating simple procedures, which make it a mess. I do urge you though to look at footage of rugby union in the 90s, so early professional era, when it comes to ruck and ball and scrummaging, and you'll see a complete difference to rugby union now. You'll see that the feed is straight. Both scrums are trying to win against the head. So the defending team is trying to win against the head a lot of the time because the ball is straight and both hookers have a chance, which means there's actually less drive in the initial 2-3 seconds of a scrum, which means the scrum is nice and stable, which means the props have less pressure on their necks, the hooker has less pressure on his neck, which is the worst, and the ball is generally coming out straight through the number 8's legs, and it doesn't wheel too much. Now it's a mess. So you go back 15, 20 years, you'll see perfect scrumming. If you go back about 10 years, you'll see perfect rucking. And about the same amount of time for mauling as well. Go and look at some of the older footage of rugby union from the 90s and the early 2000s, and you will see proper quality rucks. Just look at the ruck and maul and how it's evolved in a bad way. There are less penalties for holding on. There are less penalties for non-release of the tackle. And you will see a bit more footwork that make it a bit queasy. But I'll tell you now, most players ain't going to want to lie there for 80 minutes holding onto the ball or holding on in the tackle because they're going to want to get out of the way. Partly because they're more used to their team in defence because that's an extra body or attack and they can actually benefit their team. And partly because they don't want to risk getting stamped to death. It hurts a lot. They will stop doing it. Yeah. It's a simple natural instinct to survive. You don't want to put yourself in danger all the time. You stop doing it. So you notice the game flows more. I will say this, there's a lot more penalties now, very stop-start. That's why a lot of people like watching rugby league. It's more flow. I get that. 10 years ago, it was the other way around. Rugby league was a bit more stop-start with sets of 6, and rugby union was more flowing. It's reversed, and they've overcomplicated the rules, the laws of union. League, their issue is they're not growing the game in the right areas, which is holding league back. Union's holding itself back with overcomplicating the game with the rule book. League is holding itself back by not exploring and expanding in the right areas. They're very stuck in the 1950s. They're stuck in the past. Union's overcomplicating its future. Plain and simple. Done and dusted. Right, you've asked a lot of questions. We've ended up on rugby, and I've already gone on a bit of a rant about rugby union and rugby league. Massive rant there. Do apologise, but it had to be done because for years this has been happening in both codes with the poor tackle technique. They've outlawed the shoulder charge in rugby league now. They've outlawed the old biff, which I think is wrong. I think they should be allowed to fight, but it's just me. Rugby union, they've overcomplicated the rule book, and the interpretation is so wide in variance from referee to referee. Just keep the rule book simple. Go back to 2003, look at the laws then, and go, that's how it works. Because they've decided for the last 15 years to make it so complicated, you want to just rip your hair out and go, I do not understand what they're doing. And that's what puts a lot of casual fans off rugby unions. It's seen as a mess from the floor, and it is. Scrummaging is a mess and is embarrassing. The ruck and maul is embarrassing. And I would give them both an earful. I'll say the heads of rugby league, you're not expanding in the right areas. You're stuck in the 1950s. You're not representative of British society right now in the Super League with a lack of ethnic minority involvement at supporter level and at playing level. I can think of Leon Price and Jermaine McGilvery as the two black players that I can name off the top of my head. Well, rugby, you've overcomplicated the rules. You're making it a mess. Casual fans are put off. They do not understand what's going on. As an ex-player, I am confused about the technique, tackle technique, scrummaging technique, and rucking technique. It's all wrong. It's actually, even though you've tried to make it safer with less contact to the head, you're actually making it more dangerous because players are not tackling properly. Like Lee Halfpenny, they have got no tackle technique. He wants to decapitate himself. Every time he goes in for a tackle, I'm going, he's going to get knocked out in this game at least once. The HIA test is a joke because they found ways around it. Independent doctors, please. If you're going to bring in a concussion protocol, make sure the doctors are completely independent of both national sides, please. That way, there's no favourable doctoring there, because that is a serious thing. George North, the way Welsh dealt with George North, not happy with it. He's had a lot of concussions. I would say have an independent matchday doctor, please, and therefore you get rid of that doctor bending the rules for a player to get him back on the pitch because he's a key player. Problem solved. So the HIA is being abused by teams and officials. We know that, both the league and union. Independent matchday doctors, please, straight away. Don't care. So teams cannot get decent players back on the pitch when the replacement for him is not as, let's say, as skilled. If that guy's not fit, he shouldn't play. End of. Too many loopholes in the HIA. Too many. I've seen too many teams blag it with a players. I've seen too many concussions. I've been concussed. Let's not play with people's lives here. I love the contact. I like the physicality. When a player is clearly not fit to continue because of concussion or a head injury or neck injury, get him off. Done. So I would give World Rugby a right earful. As an ex-amateur player, I would give them a vitriolic earful about how they've mismanaged the scrum, how they've allowed the ruck to become a little bit too safe. I like a bit of footwork. It's got the players out the way. If you put your foot down his stomach like that, he's going to want to move pretty quick. He ain't going to want to lie there when he's got a whole pack of forwards and some backs coming in to ruck out who are just not going to stop until he's out the way. They're going to run over him. He's going to feel it. There were some nasty scenes with some severe deliberate stamping, but proper ruck work. There's less holding on the floor. The players get out of the way pretty quick because they don't want to have their head stamped in. Maul the line out. Just keep it simple. Both sets of forward pack, full numbers or reduced numbers. I don't like seeing this full 15 lineup, 14 lineup with the hooker throwing into 14 players. That just shows that team just doesn't have the ability to get over the line. They've got to put everyone in. Keep it simple. You've got to have a minimum amount of players in the back line outside of a line out to stop that 14-man line out, which is a disgusting joke. Just saying, not a fan of it. Numbers in the lineup have to be equal for both sides. Bang. The maul. The maul's a bit of a mess because they came with this experiment where we could drop the maul within 2 paces. That was dangerous, and they realised very quickly, no. What is collapsing with the ball? Can it go down on its own weight? How long does it have to be stationary before they have to use the ball? Because I hear the referees shout, use it, and it's stationary for a long period of time. Does crabbing sideways count as movement? I would say yes. If the maul gets driven backwards, I would say allow the maul to continue because now the defensive team have got an advantage of the drive. There are interesting ways. I think the maul is a difficult one, but definitely the ruck, definitely the scrum and tackle technique need to be done. If a player cannot tackle technique, even if he gets concussed, yellow card him, just get him out of there. Say, look, no, your tackle technique's crap. You're not playing. Plain and simple. You've got to start finding scrum half coaches and scrum coaches for basically not scrummaging properly because they're risking the health of their own players and the opposition dangerously by wheeling in, boring in, and not driving straight. If they feed the ball straight down the middle of the tunnel, not their half, down the middle of the tunnel, it means both hookers have to hook the ball, which means hooker size will shrink because no prop will want to balance a 20-stone bloke on his shoulders for 80 minutes. Because hookers used to be the smallest forwards of the lot because they had to balance on their two props. Now that's not the case. So players like Dylan Hartley, who are not actually hookers because they can't hook the ball to save their lives, are hookers, which is embarrassing because the word hooker means you have to hook the ball with your foot. They don't do that anymore because the speed's so squint. You know what's going to happen. Very rarely do scrums get one against the head anymore. I used to love seeing scrums one against the head. It was brilliant if you were the defending side and you won that scrum. Oh, you felt good. You felt good. Now it's like you expect to lose the scrum. You expect to have to defend first, second, third phase. It's not so fun. So yeah, I would love to have both heads of both codes or representatives of both codes and say this is disgusting, sort it out. I don't, and I, as an ex, and if they go, well, you're not playing the game, I was like, yeah, because I got injured because I was allowed to get concussed twice in the same game and knocked out and told I was fit to play on. I was allowed to play on with a torn groin that was completely, I could barely move, but hey, we had no subs left, so to play with a broken nose and not being able to breathe properly. Yeah, play on, was put a bit of cotton wool up there and wrap it up. There is a point where you got to go. I'm at an amateur level. I'm being forced to pay to play. I'm not getting paid for this. I'm paying to get injured. It was frustrating. It really was. Playing with clearly not fit, especially the concussion, that really wound me up when the referee knew I'd definitely been knocked out once. And to get knocked out again, I almost choked. I was actually choking on my gum shield. No doctor came over to assess me and say, right, you're concussed. I was so ill. I was ill for a couple of weeks. I kept frying up. Played the next week. Probably not the best idea. Had a banging headache. Was still not right. Played the next week. So yeah, I would definitely give the chiefs of both codes a definite earful, and they're going to listen. Would they get words airways? Probably not. I don't care if they've been regulating the game for 20 years, if they've never played the game. I don't care. I've played the game at amateur level. I can tell you at grassroots level, the protocols have not been followed for injury protocols at all. They don't exist. If they do, it's very rare. The fact that I played on twice whilst I've been knocked out, I was out. I was hurt. I could tell I was hurt because I had a massive chunk out my nose and I had a screaming black eye from the first contact, which was from my own player in a tackle. I'd gone low and he was trying to smash the guy high, and his hips smashed me in the side, the head, and the temple, spun me round. I was out. I was out. So yeah, I was just thinking about the injuries I sustained. I was daydreaming a little bit. Yeah. No, I was just having a little think then. I know I went quiet. I was having a little think about some of not only the concussions and injuries I've had, but the injuries some of my friends have had, some of the injuries I've seen whilst watching contact sport. It's not that we're going to get concussed. We know we are going to get concussed playing contact sport. I fully was aware of getting knocked out. I was fully aware of it. We're not going to take concussion out of rugby union, rugby league, and ice hockey. We're not. But it's how they allow players to play on while completely not fit. If you are going to have a head injury assessment, be it in rugby union, rugby league, and ice hockey, you can tell on the field or on the ice if that player is fit to continue straight up. You can see. There are certain players who think it shouldn't be taken out of the player's hands. There are other, like, so if you look at James Graham, rugby league player, he says the decision to play on should not be taken out of the player's hands. The player needs to have an input. No, I think while I understand his viewpoint, I have to disagree as that amateur player who's been knocked out, and I know what a head blow feels like. Even from school days, I've been knocked out a few times. I can tell you now. It hurts. It's the aftermath. It's not just the knee injuries, the muscular injuries. I've had a few muscular injuries. That's not the worry. It's the head ones. I can feel sore in my body because I know I've played a physical game, or I took some big hits. That doesn't bother me. It's my head, the inside of here. I even now, years down the line, I have some bad days with I wouldn't say post concussion syndrome, but the after effects of having a lot of concussions. I do occasionally, I do occasionally daydream a little bit and forget things more now than what I did when I was 20. I'm 28, 29, nearly 29, and I'm already having issues with some day to day things. Not every day, but occasionally I forget where things are placed, which is why I'm very particular about where I place things, because I do have that. Oh, Christ, I've forgotten where I put my spare. Well, this is my broken vape. I've got to get a new battery pack for that, but occasionally I can't find this. I've got my fluids. Sometimes I can't find my vape fluids. I know they live here, but they seem to not always stay where they should. So yeah, that's the after effects of having a lot of blows to the head. I've got friends who are involved in boxing and kickboxing, and they've had some massive headshots, which is why I have concerns about their future health. I know I would be more than happy to give my brain over to research. I'd actually sign up for a research project saying that I've had concussion, I've played contact sports. I'm more than happy to sign up for medical research. And if they find out that I'm going to die when I'm 50, so be it. I know. I'm not against the big physical contact in the game. I love the big hits. I just think the way they deal with concussed players or injured players isn't right. There should be a minimum amount of time a player is not even allowed to train, even like just jogging around. There should be a minimum time frame between a concussion or a suspected concussion and being allowed to play. There should be an independent doctor and medical staff that assess that player, not the team medical staff, independent on match day. Has to happen. We are aware that the HIA system is being abused in both codes and in ice hockey. It is being abused by team doctors, being pressurised by coaches to pass that player fit when the player clearly isn't. We've seen with the NFL and the NHL CT lawsuit that they've basically conceded, we should have done more. Not about the actual concussion, but about looking after you when you got concussed. There has to be a fund in all professional sports where they all come together and say, look, we're contact sports, concussions happen, other injury related things happen. Here's a medical fund that we've put aside as professional sport around the world. Bang. Oh no, yeah, I've seen various bits into old football documentaries about concussion. What is interesting though about this is rugby league, rugby union, ice hockey. There are less concussions or suspected head injuries then than there are now, when they weren't wearing helmets and when they weren't wearing scrum caps. Whereas football's going the other way with concussion, with the lighter footballs, but other sports are going one way, and there seems to be more. I don't know. I have to admit, I think in the contact sports, the players have got bigger and faster and more powerful, and concussions go up. Football, the ball has changed. It's lighter, but we are seeing a lot of clash of heads when players are going to head the ball. Yeah, well, you could say they feel more safer. If you look at the big contact sports, the players are bigger and more powerful, and the tackle technique is worse than what it was 20 years ago. We are seeing more concussions and more head injuries now in Union League and ice hockey than we were 20 years ago. Well, ice hockey's actually had a longer spate of going back to the 80s when the game was really badly refereed. It's down to refereeing standards as well. In the 70s and 80s, ice hockey was really poorly officiated, which allowed more dirty hits to take place, the dirtier game. And they didn't wear helmets, which was a thing. Rugby league and rugby union, the refereeing standard, I think, has actually stayed pretty constant. It's the size of the players and the technique of the tackle which has gone wrong, and slightly the standard refereeing is not keeping up with the rule changes. There are some massive hits going in. I do suggest if you want to see players get concussed, just go on YouTube. You can find massive hits from the last decade. And if you want to see the old school, early 90s, you'll see a complete difference in how the game is played at ruck, maul, tackle area, you name it. Now it is a crazy game. Obviously, there's that current Guinness advert looking at Shane Williams, probably one of the smallest guys to play rugby in the professional era. And he was told he was too small to play, yet he managed to, I think, get 50 odd tries for Wales and 80 odd caps, being like 5'8". It is doable as a smaller man. And guess what? He wasn't concussed all the time because he actually had a tackle technique, and he wasn't concussed all the time. So that says something about sometimes more players get away with it. There is an issue. We have now gone on for about an hour on this point to do with concussions and the governance of games. And thankfully, it isn't football. It's beautiful. It's not football. It's beautiful. I love my live streams on it. It's not all football questions. It's amazing. I get a hard on for it because football has its own issues, and that's to do with governance behind the scenes. Rugby union, rugby league, ice hockey, American football has issues with player welfare more. And I think with the current lawsuits that have gone in American football and ice hockey, other leagues are going to be looking at going, yeah, we should put things in place now to avoid these lawsuits, such as proper HIA checks that are done by independent doctors, proper recovery times, not rushing them back. Because this will, player gets injured. This gives one of those younger players a chance to play. Instead of being forced out on line or sitting on the bench, if you actually enforced proper injury layoffs, you wouldn't have all these young players sent out on loan like Chelsea do. You would actually have all these players actually playing games right here, right now. Byproduct of this. Proper independent medical assessments, which aren't necessarily the medical team of the teams as well. Oh, yeah, no, James Graham in the Rugby League, he's very vocal that players should have a say. And I respect his view. I think it's possibly wrong, but I respect his view. The fact is, though, that he's been demonised for having that view by some in the media who are ex-players. I think we should listen to what James Graham has to say calmly, because he is the player who's had a lot of concussions. He is a player who's a physical player in rugby league. He plays the game. Let's listen to see what he has to say. I'm more of it. This is welfare. Has to be an independent doctor. Regular independent doctor checks have to come up if they feel he's unsafe. They should put it to right to the league authorities saying this team aren't looking after this player's welfare, and that might start getting players better looked after. They're going to get concussed. They're going to have broken arms. They're going to have muscular injuries. They're going to have wear and tear. We've seen so many players have to retire because of repetitive neck and shoulder injuries lately. Sam Warburton, because of poor tackle technique. What we have to see now is independent doctors actually coming in on a weekly basis and assessing. Yeah, and that would name and shame clubs, and then going to the authorities saying that they are not looking after the welfare of this player. If the sports are to take welfare seriously, look at the NHL. There's a great documentary by the New York Times on their channel about the rise and fall of Derek Boogaard. He was an NHL enforcer, liked to fight a lot, basically died because he wasn't looked after properly. What they were doing is they were just dosing him full of pills and painkillers, not actually looking at the fact he had been concussed so many times that he was going to be dead by the time he was 40 anyway. The fact he died when he was 28, I think, numbed the pain that he was going to face had he survived, because he would have been dead by the time of 40 anyway. He had been concussed over 100 plus times in his NHL career. By the time he retired, he had had so many blows to the head by fighting and hits to the head and taking blows to the head that he would have been dead by 40. They said his brain was so damaged, and the tissue around, the brain fluid around him, the spinal cord and all his muscles, his hands were wrecked. He had broken hands all over the place. He was so damaged physically that by the age of 40, he would have to be in a care home. He died when he was 28. watch that documentary, The Rise and Fall, punched out Rise and Fall of Derek Bugard. It's on the New York Times YouTube page. It is a must watch. While I love fighting in hockey and I love the big hits, he wasn't looked after. That's my argument. He shouldn't have, and this is where teams need to look after their players better as well. Naming and shaming clubs might do the trick. It will do the trick. If they are known not to be taking player welfare seriously, that will do the trick. Bad publicity harms product. Do the trick. We've seen certain clubs try and bend the rules. Oh yeah, it's not just ice hockey, it's rugby. It's boxing. Boxing is known for, look how many boxers make it to their 80s. Not many. Look how many boxers die in their 70s. Quite a few. How many boxers die before they're 70? A hell of a lot. We've seen a lot of boxers currently boxing die in the ring or in training incidents. This last couple of years, there's been a lot of bleeds on the brain. They've got to look at in training, sparring, wearing helmets again, wearing headgear again. Amateurs not wearing headgear is insanity. Boxing is reaching a point now, and kickboxing and MMA, they're all. It's just a case of CTE. It's embarrassing. It's cringe. It's not that it's not that ice hockey players and rugby players don't get concussions. It's how they're looked after. That's my argument. It's not just injuries. The amount of players who are rushed back from injury who then become injury prone because that knee hasn't fully healed, that shoulder hasn't fully healed, that neck injury, that back injury, that ankle injury that they have to retire before their 30s. Or it's not just a concussion, it's the whole welfare of the player. Independent doctors would nullify a lot of the problems. Independent doctors regularly assessing on a weekly basis the recovery of a player would. There's going to be some cost to that, but with the amount of money in professional sport now, I think they can afford a bit more welfare. Play welfare on the side. The fact they're not willing just shows how greedy the sport's become. Individual athletes are suing their sports for poor welfare. Even with headgear, it's debatable whether it reduces concussions or not. But hey, whatever the solution and outcome, the sports need to have independent medical opinion, because when they have the team doctor or the player doctor, they're going to pass and fit when they shouldn't a lot of the time. Oh God, yeah. I would say on player recovery, not necessarily in training, but if a player goes down with an injury, an independent doctor has to assess. So if there's an injury in training, they go straight to hospital. Straight to hospital, have an assessment, be it a head injury or even a minor muscular injury. Even if the club has to sign up with a private hospital, I would definitely say that the Premier League needs to have an agreement with a private hospital chain, possibly. Stuff like that. We'll have to see if when Red Dead 2 is fully online. I've been doing a bit of GTA 5 online the last couple of days and doing all the car racing. I don't do all the missions based, I find them a bit much, but it'll be interesting to see. Esports is another interesting one, but we've been discussing a lot of obviously the welfare of the athletes. I think that's more important. We can discuss esports, I think, on another live stream. I do honestly agree that esports is a big talking point and needs more coverage. I may have to do a video on esports. I will get the whiteboard out over in the next couple of days, and I will do a video on esports. I think we need to look more at the impact of esports on mainstream sport going forward. It's really interesting. But back to the training injuries. Yeah, there are issues with players going injured in training and repetitively injuring the same injury as well. Our teams, and I'm saying team sports here, rushing players back who aren't fully fit, with the amount of players who have repetitive injury problems and they just can never get fully fit. Ledley King is a prime example with his knee problems. Ivan Hargreaves, Jack Wilshere. We're talking about football players here. We can look at rugby players. Sam Albertson's had to retire because of a shoulder injury that would never recover. He was told if he carried on playing, he'll paralyse himself. That then comes down to the team doctor passing him fit, and the team physio passing him fit, or saying you're fit enough to play. You will hurt a little bit. You may not be able to play the full 80 minutes, but you can play. Risk paralysis. That's not fit enough for me. With the amount of money in pro sport, yeah, they can afford medical care. Independent doctors, absolutely. If that means they sign an agreement with Bupa or some private healthcare provider. So, let's get on to WWE and the welfare of the athletes there, and then pro wrestling, because there isn't any welfare of the wrestling entertainers. of the product. There's none. I fell out of love with wrestling as a teenager because of the death of Eddie Guerrero and then the follow up with the death and the murder suicide of Chris Benoit and his family. The way they dealt with those two and others, it's a joke. The wellness policy is a joke. CM Punk, you have to listen to his podcast with Colt Cabana a couple of years ago when he discusses having the cyst on his back or whatever it is, the Phil Wood pass that almost killed him, and the way that the reason why he left. Oh God, there's wrestlers dying in their 30s. Eddie Guerrero died in his 30s. Chris Benoit died in his 30s, 40s and 50s. There's the death range of wrestlers is late 20s to late 50s. They die in droves. They die in their large numbers, and they continue to do so. I have friends who are involved in the British circuit of pro wrestling and independent circuit. Some of the people say, "Oh, it's all fake." I've had mates paralysed. I've had mates. My mate's brother basically was tombstoned incorrectly, shattered his neck, and it was his first proper show. He'd been training for 6 months. He trained up to get to a standard to compete as a job. As a heel, literally just go in, get a guy over. He literally all he had to do was last couple of minutes, be thrown around the ring a little bit, put some moves in himself, get tombstone, get pinned, get done. When the tombstone happened, the guy got it wrong, broke his neck, almost paralysed him. So the organisers were sued, and they somehow got away with not having to pay that much money in compensation. So yeah, I've helped set up a wrestling ring. There is a lot of wood in there. That's not as soft landing as you think. I've been rugby tackled onto one of them, picked up and slammed down. I tell you now, it hurts. Oh yeah, there may be a bit of kayfabe in there with the storyline and a bit of getting a guy over, and it may be scripted on who wins, but they've got to perform those moves correctly. Otherwise, you can kill each other. We've seen legs break, we've seen backs break. Yeah, a lot of wrestlers got injured in the ring with moves gone wrong. Eddie Guerrero actually, I think, had a heart attack in the ring, and JBL had to pin him and go, right, we're going to keep kayfabe before people panic because there's 20,000 people in this arena, and then we get him out of here on a gurney, and they did. He had a massive heart murmur, basically a small heart attack. Was dead within a year. Heart disease brought on by steroid and drug misuse. Chris Benoit, when they did the autopsy, he had the brain of an 85-year-old. He was 37. It looked like he had dementia for 20 years. That is how bad Chris Benoit was mentally. Yeah, Steve Austin broke his neck, was never fully the same. Triple H popped his quads, broken his leg. Edge, Christian, a lot of wrestlers have had some. You just have to list the injuries that they've had. We could discuss not just WWE but all pro wrestling. I think some of them smaller, like TNA, which is now Impact, I think they look after their wrestling talent a lot better. There are still issues to do with steroid misuse and rushing them back into competition when they're clearly not right. There are problems. Steve Austin had bad knees and a neck break. You got to look at Kurt Angle. When he was in the Olympics in '96, he broke his neck in, I think, the bronze medal match, which got through, and the gold medal match, he was wrestling with a broken neck. He's had to have repetitive knee and neck surgeries, both when he was in WWE and TNA. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he doesn't make it to 50 either. He's called the Cyborg because you can actually see the scars on his body where he's had his body rebuilt. He has no neck because it's basically been rebuilt 3 or 4 times. Oh yeah, Mick Foley has admitted, yeah, he pushed the boundaries of what you could physically do, and yeah, of course, he obviously lost all those matches, kayfabe, but it's not just him. You got Al Snow with Head. You got Tommy Dreamer. All those guys from ECW. They really pushed the boundaries of physicality of what the human body could take, and they will all admit, yeah, we shouldn't do that anymore. The headshots, chairs, and the wheelie bins were a little bit much. The barbed wire on baseball bats. Yeah, we shouldn't be doing this. Tommy Dreamer, Al Snow, and Mick Foley. Those 3 in the '90s really pushed the boundaries of what you could get away with in a ring, or a cage, or a street fight. They were entertaining to watch, but they have admitted, yeah, the injuries they've sustained, it's not as fake as it seems. They put their bodies on the line to entertain millions of people. and they haven't been fully looked after. No, their health has been wrecked. Mick Foley's admitting, yeah, okay, I'm forgetting stuff. It's like if you watch Hell in a Cell when he falls through the announce table and he fell through the cage. Both those things were not meant to happen. He went through the wrong announce table. He was going to go through the American announce table where they're all sat. He goes through the Spanish one where no one's sat. He went through the wrong table, and that was a solid oak table. He was meant to go through the other announce table. That's why JR goes, oh, good God, he's been snapped in half. He is dead. Because JR knew he's gone through the wrong table. I'm going to act as surprised as possible, but I know something's wrong here. He dislocated his shoulder. At that point, his arm is out. At that point, he had a fractured collarbone, and one of his teeth had gone through his lip and into his nose. He then got off the gurney because he completely forgot that he was out. He was cold. They should. We knew Undertaker was meant to win, but that's where it should have stopped. It had gone horribly wrong. He'd gone through the table. He got off the gurney and got back in the cage. Then he went through the cage when he wasn't meant to. He then got the tacks out. And Undertaker was like, fuck, we should have stopped this by now. Something's not right here, but we'll carry on because he seems to be with it. We'll carry on. He also got, you have to watch that. He did hit his head on the chair. He then gets the thumbtacks out. Undertaker gets cut open as well because that was a real injury to Undertaker's face on the cage because where Mick Foley had come in, the cage got damaged and there were bits of loose metal. He did injure Undertaker, did have a massive cut across the head, needed stitches, which wasn't shown on pay-per-views because he had to heal. But then obviously Undertaker wins the match. Afterwards, Mick Foley goes to Undertaker, goes, how did it go, man? Did I use the tacks? He actually asked him the question, did I use the thumbtacks? Undertaker comes back to him and goes, Mick, check out your fucking back. Oh, I did then. He doesn't remember that entire first Hell in a Cell. They had 3 of them in a year. He doesn't remember that one. He doesn't remember going through the table. He doesn't remember going through the cage. He doesn't remember using his signature move with the thumbtacks and Socko. Doesn't remember it. The Undertaker had to tell him, well, I'll be killed out there tonight, but are you all right, mate? All he comes back with is, did I use the thumbtacks? Yes. Well, I don't remember. They're in your back. And they were actually picking thumbtacks out of his back. Then Vince McMahon comes in and says, guys, you've killed it tonight. Brilliant. Love it. Ratings through the roof. Mick, never fucking do that ever again. So even Vince McMahon realised there was a welfare issue, says don't do it again. They do 2 more Hell in a Cells after that with the 2 same wrestlers, which was just as brutal. You can put into that what you want to say about Vince McMahon. What got me is looking back, and when I was a kid in the 90s, the steroids trial made my mum go, I don't want him watching this. Yeah, I'd still watch WWF. It was WWF at the time until they got sued by the World Wildlife Foundation because pandas look like wrestlers going through chairs, tables, of course. There was the steroids trial in 1994. And yes, Mick Foley is God in the business, and there's a few others beyond the map. There's quite a few documentaries about a variety of things. The best thing I can say is listen to the Colt Cabana podcast. He is brilliant. When he gets ex-wrestlers or talks with Jericho, their 2 podcasts are brilliant. With Chris Jericho and Colt Cabana with their podcast, they get ex-wrestlers who are in the business to basically be as honest as possible about the business because they're not all contracted to Vince McMahon. They can say what the fuck they want. And some of them really let fly at Vince McMahon. They are brilliant, and they are refreshing to hear. Especially when Vicky Guerrero's one, really heartbreaking. Listen to what happened to Eddie Guerrero and how WWE didn't really support as much as they could. CM Punk on Colt Cabana and Talk to Jericho, he just destroys the wrestling industry in an hour and a half on both podcasts. I don't like CM Punk, but he basically destroys the pro wrestling industry as it is with the lack of welfare and the lack of care towards the talent. And it's true, they don't care enough. Mick Foley push the boundaries. He would get away with it now, but would he? I think he would, but it's not what he's doing in the ring. It's how he's looked after outside of, and that's where Vince McMahon failed for 30 years. Hasn't looked after the wrestling talent, has allowed them to be pumped full of steroids, pumped full of performance enhancers, and haven't done enough to give a fuck. The talks with Jericho and Colt Cabana podcasts are brilliant. I don't listen to them as much as I used to. But when I find one that piques my interest, Well, they have an ex-wrestler who is destroying and giving two fingers to Vince McMahon. I love it. The CM Punk ones are the best, but when he blew up and left WWE, that's when it was more interesting to listen to it. Now it is dated. You know he's failed in MMA. You know he hasn't made it at UFC. Got the shit kicked out of him. He's faded into obscurity somewhat, but the points he makes are valid at the time and would still be valid now. But Talk to Jericho is really fun. It puts a different light on pro wrestling. Because they admit, there's kayfabe, and the storylines are made up, but the pain is real. Matt and Jeff Hardy, there's a pair of brothers. Jeff Hardy, he has many issues with substance abuse because he's wrestling with injuries all the time. I think people would admit that. But athlete welfare is crucial, and as we've ended up on wrestling, they are still not looked after properly. And was it Jim Cornette? Yeah, I've heard little snippets of him, but I think the best wrestler to listen to who's being interviewed is William Regal. He is brilliant. British wrestler, wrestled in the 80s, had issues with alcohol and drugs, and he even admits he had issues with alcohol and drugs. Very anti-steroids, very pro-welfare. He does work for WWE. I wouldn't say he's a massive fan of Vince McMahon, though. But some of the things he says are starting to hint at what I would say a changing culture that needs to happen. The quicker Vince McMahon is gone from that company, and I wouldn't give it to Triple H because you can tell he's a roid monkey. The quicker it goes to Shane McMahon and not his sister, the better I think it will go. And I think Shane McMahon would basically clean it up a lot. I think Vince, they're not doing enough to make sure that the talent pool is looked after and healthy. There are a lot of allegations of some dodgy dealings with the contracts and not necessarily making them recover from injuries. They wrestle them when they're not fit. That's where CM Punk comes from, and CM Punk is right in some of the things he said when he was on Talks with Jericho and on the Colt Cabana podcast. Shane McMahon, I don't think is happy with the way the company's going. I think he's gone back into being a wrestler himself. I think he is very down to earth. He's taken a lot of crap in kayfabe. He's been put through tables. Some of the things he's done where he's fallen off the ladder from like 30 feet, you shouldn't do. He's put his body on the line for his dad's company. He's been treated like shit by his dad's company. And I have concerns about pro wrestling going forward. TNA's had money issues, had to rebrand itself for the third time. Ring of Honor is scrabbling for pieces. WWE, I don't know. Yeah, Shane got put through the glass when it was it wasn't actually the right glass to go for. He's taken a lot. He's put his body on the line a lot, and I do believe Shane McMahon was friends with a lot of the locker room at the time of the Eddie Guerrero death and at the time of Chris Benoit, and I think he took it personally. Some of his colleagues and friends have died since wrestling. And Jim Cornette as well. You gotta have some of these weird things, but it's interesting that we got onto wrestling a lot here. The issues within professional wrestling is the steroid scandal of the 90s. That hasn't gone away. And the big promotion in WWE, the big one, they're the market leader here, not looking after their talent. And it's come out, and we know that their contracts are not very good. If you speak out against something that's going on, you're treated like crap. And CM Punk was one of the few who decided to take it to him. And look at him now. WWE's made very difficult for CM Punk to get anywhere in the pro wrestling business ever again. Sean Gator and Nikki Weaver. Oh God, Sean Gator. I haven't heard that name for a while. Feed the goat and he will score. Yeah, a lot of Man City fans, forget Sean Gator. Oh God, yeah. If you look at it was a federal warrant, and he had to stand on a federal trial, not a state trial for the steroid scandal, because he was breaking the law by moving large amounts of anabolic steroids. How he got away with with not going to jail bemuses even me. Then you got to look at the Owen Hart death when the stunt failed. Got live on a pay-per-view, he landed on his neck and killed himself straight away. So there's a variety of things. A British Bulldog as well. Comeback Kid, all that. The 90s, the 80s, 90s, and 2000s, yes. While I love the Attitude Era kayfabe, and I love some of the crazy ECW street fighting with Mankind and Al Snow with Head, and Tommy Dreamer with the bloody band, the Big Sticks. Oh yeah, they kept the show on even though Owen died. Yeah, no, that was wrong. They didn't wait for the full facts to come out by Chris Benoit before they did a tribute show. The handling of some very important things, the death of Owen Hart to the death of Benoit. Yeah, when wrestlers died, like Eddie Guerrero, who was on the night before a pay-per-view, he died in Minnesota. He was in St. Paul, Minnesota. It was the night before a pay-per-view and a house show, and he died in his sleep. And they went ahead with that house show, even though I would like to ask on Vince McMahon about my views on Vince McMahon. I hate the guy. I used to love pro wrestling. I still occasionally put the odd pro wrestling program on. But my views on Vince McMahon, how he's out of prison, I don't know. He was on a federal trial, the drugs trial at the time, which could lead to long sentences and massive fines. The way they handled the Owen Hart death, wrong. The way they handled Eddie Guerrero's death when he was still an active wrestler as well. He died the night before a pay-per-view and a house show in Minnesota, wrong. And the Chris Benoit death, they didn't wait for the full facts to come out, and they handled that badly as well. And there are those that still believe there are things to come out about that. But we know about Benoit taking excessive headshots to the head. Long after other wrestlers went, hang on a sec, I've been concussed a few times. I don't feel great. Chris, are you sure you want to keep doing this? Because I'm a big bloke and this is forced. Oh no, hit me in the head. Okay. The willingness that Chris Benoit had to take headshots with chairs long after other wrestlers were like, I'm not so willing, I want to do this. I don't feel comfortable. We've got to work this into the routine where it's going to hurt being hit around the head, but hey, I don't want to be concussed. I want to be able to finish this routine without fucking it up because this is a pay-per-view show. I don't want to screw this up. Chris Benoit would still take headshots. He would go head first through tables. He would take chair shots, flying chair shots. Oh no! By the time he realised his health was failing, he'd lost his best friend in Eddie Guerrero the year and a half before. But yeah, he wasn't aware of the damage he was doing to his body. He was one of those who was willing to entertain the crowd. Then Eddie Guerrero died, and that's when it changes for him. Notice the timeline. They come into the wrestling business young, fresh-faced in the late 90s. Owen Hart dies in the ring, on the ring buckle, coming down from the ceiling. They're at that show. Other things happen in between. Other wrestlers die. Severe injuries happen to other wrestlers. Eddie Guerrero dies in a hotel room in Minnesota, in St. Paul, Minnesota, the night before a show. It turns out heart attack. Best friend, a year and a half later, there is a suicide note found. Chris Benoit was clearly suffering with depression, possibly bipolar. Yes, he was in a very agitated state. He felt that he was being harassed by people. He felt he was being followed. There was a lot of paranoia in his life. And when obviously they found the bodies, there's a conspiracy theory that it's a setup that he was murdered as well. There was theories that he was going to speak out on the steroid misuse again and the welfare of athletes because he had apparently been complaining of a lot of headaches, blurred vision, memory loss. He was planning to spill allegedly he was planning to spill the beans. Again, conjecture. Other wrestlers and colleagues were getting concerned by the fact he hadn't been in contact for a few days. I forget who the wrestler was who was meant to meet up with him for a training session. Couldn't get hold of him. He missed the training session. I think another wrestler found him. I can't remember which wrestler it was, but another wrestler found him in the house. But yeah, no. They didn't wait for all the facts to come out. They rushed through this memorial thing. Then they tried to erase him from history. This is where I think there is wrongdoing. Yes, he was willing. Yeah, I think it was Chris Jericho, one of the smaller, sleeker wrestlers. Um, yes, he was willing to take share shots to the head when our wrestlers like, dude, I'm a big guy. I'm putting a lot of force behind this. We've got to get this routine right. If you're concussed or you're not with it, we can't safely do the rest of the routine. But no, he was willing to take dangerous chair shots. I think it was Chris Jericho. And yeah, it had a. We could discuss the motivations behind it. But yeah, Vince McMahon and WWE failed to protect in the years leading up. They could have easily avoided a lot of this. But they didn't. But we'll come back to that in a minute. If Tottenham finished third in the Champions League group and the Europa League, would that be a legitimate trophy for Spurs? But it automatically qualifies them for Champions League for next season if they win. So it doesn't matter on their league position. Their league position starts faltering, which it could do, and they could finish outside the Champions League places if they win the Europa League. Automatic Champions League qualification done and dusted. It is a legitimate trophy. It's They haven't won a European trophy for a long time. They haven't won a trophy for a long time. They need to win silverware now. That FA Cup semi-final defeat still hurts from last season. Yeah, any trophy is a win. Plain and simple. They have to win with this squad to justify rebuilding the stadium at such exorbitant cost. If they fail to win a trophy in the next year or so, then what's the point of building this stupidly overpriced stadium that no one really wants, apart from Daniel Levy, to make money off the NFL? Spurs taking a big risk with that stadium. They could stay at the standard White Hart Lane and rebuild it in place while keeping the. I don't know. They've taken a big risk. They've won nothing with this squad. They've come second place, second and third a lot of the times, and they've blown it. They've won nothing yet. They've choked every season since 2010. They've choked. They're chokers, which is worrying me with England with so many Spurs players in the squad. And yeah, England choked it in the semi-final. They did, and the third place playoff. They choked because all the Spurs players. Just a theory. Yeah, they haven't won a thing since the League Cup 2007. They need. It's been 11 years now. They need silverware. Any trophy will do. They've choked the FA Cup. They've choked the league a couple of seasons in a row now. Yeah, just because they're finishing above Arsenal doesn't mean they're the better team. Arsenal can keep winning trophies even when they're shit. So we'll leave that open to debate as much as we want, shall we? Back to the wrestling thing. Yeah, there are some very interesting documentaries and interviews done with ex-wrestlers, and some of them are very, very critical of some periods of the Attitude Era under Vince McMahon. It's not the storylines, it's not the sexualization, it's the health and welfare of the athletes and the talent. So many of those wrestlers now are dead. China, a female wrestler who ended up doing porn, yeah, she's dead now. She died not that long ago, very sadly. Again, good friends with Benoit and Eddie Guerrero. And pro wrestling has a problem. I think WWE is where all the problems lie. TNA had a very strict policy on drugs and steroid misuse and disciplinary issues. They were a small promotion. They couldn't really afford to suspend talent, but they did several times. They threw talent out, said, no, we're not having this. Then Hulk Hogan came along and that sort of wasn't so good. But then Sting came along and he was very anti-steroids, and he'd obviously wrestled with Hogan before in the 80s and 90s, and he was like, no, we are not tolerating what you got away with 20, 30 years ago. You can do one. And hence why Hogan is no longer involved with TNA, and hence why Sting left TNA, because there was that loggerheads over steroid use. But no, there is definitely with me a concern about the welfare long term. I've got friends who want to make it on the big time, who are involved in amateur or pro wrestling on the independent circuit here in the UK. They want to make it to a bigger promotion. I have concerns about them, yeah, definitely. Absolutely. Have concerns about them long term wrestling. A lot of them are giving it up for various reasons, but if they want to make it into the bigger echelons and go up the indie circuit to Ring of Honor or TNA, Impact, or maybe WWE, yeah, I have massive concerns long term about what they're doing to themselves. Spurs, on the other hand, if we can. Oh yeah, no, Hulk Hogan's back. He helped destroy WCW. He did some stuff in WWE. He went to TNA, fucked that up. Goes back. Yeah, no. Hulk Hogan is a dinosaur, and he's part of the problem, not the solution. Because he was around when Vince McMahon gained the power of the company. Hogan was on roids a lot of the time. A lot of them were. He's one of the few survivors of that era who are still alive. Ironically, a lot of his you've got Ric Flair. That's about it. Ultimate Warrior dead. Was it Randy? What was his name? Uh, oh, Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan are pretty much the survivors from the late '80s era, classic WWE, WWF to the early Attitude era. There were some of the few survivors left. Most of the wrestlers from that period of time are dead now, so it concerns me. Their life expectancy is very, very low for getting past 50. It's not often done, and the fact that Ric Flair and Hulk Hogan are still alive scares the shit out of me. The amount of steroids that they did. The Warrior dead. Um, oh god, the fact he was still performing, although oh my god, it must be like watching a rusty robot go around because he's got no movement whatsoever. He's got no ring presence. He's slow. He's had hip and knee replacements. He's a cripple. He's got no bloody hair. That's all dyed and fake. Oh, it's painful to watch. It is. Also, wasn't Hulk Hogan involved in some racist sex video where he made a sex tape as well? Yeah, wrestlers seem to be doing a lot of making sex tapes over the last 20 years. Apparently, Hulk Hogan made a sex tape. Apparently, he's quite hung. But no, the issue is the welfare side of things, and we've gone on for nearly an hour on the welfare of wrestlers, let alone the welfare of rugby union, rugby league, and ice hockey players. We've gone on player welfare a lot today, and it's a massive, massive concern. Am I against the contact sports? No, it's the welfare side of it. And I could do a video on my rugby union days when I was playing at school and at amateur level, and the amount of concussions I had, and how little care was given to head injuries 10, 15 years ago. I could really let rip there, but there's no point. Complaining about what happened in the past can only get you so far. We've got to look to the future now, and there's got to be changes put in place now that will benefit long term because, there is a ticking time bomb in professional sports, team sports, and that is head injuries and injuries in general. Massive ticking time bomb, the health and welfare post retirement, even during a career. We have to do more to protect the athletes now, so down the line they can lead a better retirement or lead a fuller life when they do leave the sport behind, go into other jobs, that they can physically do that other job without having to take a retirement. Sting, Sting. He had to stop wrestling because of injury. Again, it's a concern. That would be obviously in the TNA days when they were doing that. But there is a concern, not just in all physical sports and sports entertainment, which is what wrestling is, about the welfare, long-term welfare, physical and mental of the athletes. And we can talk about the Chris Benoit thing. And he had been complaining for quite some time about, his depression and his struggles daily, and the fact he lost his best mate suddenly in Eddie Guerrero, and that he wasn't supported mentally with the emotional and physical support that was needed at the time. And then what happened, and that killed the Attitude Era. The Attitude Era didn't need to die. It was the welfare side of the athletes that wasn't being taken seriously for 20 odd years. And Vince McMahon, the buck stops with him. I have no respect for Vince McMahon. He's basically been killing talent since 1982. He's been risking the people who compete for him under his stable of WWE. He's been risking their health for 30 plus years with no consequences. Almost 40 years he's been basically running WWE, WWF, whatever you want to call it. And look how many wrestlers are dead and he is still alive. Look at the health and well-being of some of the wrestlers after they retire. Look how many untimely deaths we have had in the wrestling industry in the Vince McMahon era. That's what I'm going to leave it as. And because we've been, yes, the Venkies are still in charge. I'd rather not talk about them and their poor ownership because they also managed to get past financial fair play and fit and proper persons test, and they made a mockery of those things put in place. Vince McMahon, look at him. Yeah, he's a roid monkey. I remember when he ripped both his quads running into the ring when they screwed up a kayfabe, and he ran in and he was going nuts at top end talent. He's paid a lot of money, and he's charged down the ramp. He's running in and he's climbing the ring, and he blew both his quads up because he'd put them through so much roids That his muscles burst. Yes, he did have to point and shout, "Sat down," because he burst both his quads. Um, yeah, it is comical, but oh yeah, no, the Venky's there. We are in a good position this season. Let's not jinx it. We have bounced back from a very low ebb, getting into League One and being relegated that far. First Premier League champions to end up in League One, may I add. Although I think Leicester gave it a go. Man City have been in what is now League One before they won the Premier League, but yeah, we have been that low. We've been to as low as the third tier in the last decade. It's been a horrible decade or so. Badly run, badly run club. Don't have a clue what they're doing. Um, oh yeah, God, yeah, first Premier League champions to end up in the third tier. Yeah, and that's not fun. That's not something that I want to have on our record. Is to end up in the third tier. The fact that in my lifetime the club has gone from um, struggling to Jack Walker to getting to the Premier League champions to winning the league in the harder league when you had 22 teams, not 20. So there was more games to play to win the league as well, and you had worse pitches and more English players, which was more fun. To having the quickest hat trick in the Champions League, two players fight and get each other sent off in Batty and Graham Lasso in the Champions League. Um, to winning the League Cup after the season after getting promoted back to the Premiership against Tottenham, Wahey, to where we are now. I've been through the roller coaster of emotions as a fan. The owners are lunatics. One of them goes around with pearl hand revolvers to games. They stay away from games. They have not been seen at a game for years. Oh yeah, I've got a couple of shirts lying around in my collection. I haven't bought a new shirt for nearly a decade. I haven't been to a game for over a decade. I refuse to give the Venkies any money. Um, how they pass the fit and proper persons test set out by the FA, I have no idea. How they've also passed financial fair play with the amount of money they have spent, I have no idea. Fans are staying away. Gate receipts are low. Even though we're doing well in the Championship, we're averaging about 15,000 fans a game. And we concede 37,000 at Ewood, I believe. Somewhere between 33 and 37,000, I think our capacity is. We're half capacity. A lot of empty seats. That's not good. We have a lot of debt, but that's not good. An ultimate dream scenario is to stand the Championship this season, win the playoff final next season, make the money up there, cover the debt, get relegated, get some parachute payments. That's the only way I can see my club going under the Venkies is go up, go down. That's it. That's all I can see. I can't see a stable future with them in charge because they don't know how to run a fucking football club. They're asset strippers. They've made a lot of money out of us. They've left the club racked with debt, just saddled with hundreds of millions of pounds, well, about £200 million worth of debt. When they bought the club, we were making a profit of about 5 million a year. Now we are 200 million in debt. So yeah, I refused. That's why I don't go to football anymore, because any of my ticket goes straight to the FA to be wasted on their bonuses, and grubby, filthy owners take my money. I've protested with my wallet. A lot of Blackburn fans have. A lot of people say, "Oh, yeah, they're glory hunters." No, I've been a fan all my life. I was a fan when we were in the old Division 1 and Division 2, actually. No, we were in the old Division 2 and we went up and helped from the Premier League. Yeah, I was a fan before Jack Walker bought the club. So anyone who tells me I'm a glory hunter can fuck off. I've stuck with this side for most of my life. I've seen the side badly run by the Venkies. We got relegated before from the Premier League. We bounced back up. We dealt with the situation. We worked till we had to rebuild that squad. Within a season, we won a trophy. Yeah, it was the League Cup, and we then stayed in the Premier League until recently, when it's just gone down the toilet for the last 8 years. Let's not talk about the last 8 years, please. And the scary thing is, we're not the worst run club in England. Have you seen Blackpool down the road? Blackpool down the road is far worse, is in a far worse state than Blackburn. Terrible state under the Oysters. Their average crowd is less than 1,000 at some games. We're talking 500 fans at games. We're talking less than 5,000 at Bloomfield Road. It is not good at Blackpool. Charlton are in a mess. There are some clubs really badly run. It doesn't matter if they're English or foreign owners. There are some terribly run clubs in this country, and the Football League and the Premier League don't do anything to stop them, and the FA do nothing. Do nothing. When the actual players on the pitch and the managers and that team gets docked points, they're punishing the players, the fans, and the management. It's the club management that should be punished with fines, not the team on the field. Instead of assisting that club out of financial difficulty, they punish them further with docked points, which basically means relegation, which means less money to pay back in the league below. It's chronic. I think this is where I hate football now. Governance is shocking. Ownership is a mess. Fans are being let down up and down the country. The EFL don't support enough. The Premier League hung Portsmouth out to dry, and the FA doesn't want to touch it. And the amount of fan groups protesting about how badly run their clubs are and badly governed the sport is, go on Twitter. You'll see a lot. Go on Twitter. There's about 80 fan groups in the Football League and Premier League who are protesting regularly from about 80 of the 90. Is it 92 or 98 clubs in the Football League and Premier League? Out of the 90 odd clubs in professional league football, Premier League to League Two, about 80 of them have got protest movements right now, protesting against the ownership of their club or the EFL, the Premier League, and ticket prices regularly on a daily basis. And they're starting to make some progress in the courts as well. They are starting to slowly but surely make a change. But football governance has a long way to go to be at a decent standard at the moment. It's not at a good enough standard. There's too many poor governance decisions taking place and bad ideas and TV rights and a whole host of things. And it's a never-ending struggle to get it right. Never-ending struggle. But anyway, I'm going to leave that there. I really appreciate all your questions, guys. We've been going for over 3 hours and 20 minutes. I'm going to call it a day on this one. I've got some more videos to make on some more sports stories to look at. So I'm going to do some research. And I appreciate everything. And yeah, Greg Dyke. Oh my God. Greg Dyke was one of the. Actually, I have a lot of time for Greg Dyke because he's the reason why the Premier League exists. And if it wasn't for Greg Dyke, my team wouldn't have the Premier League trophy. He was an executive at ITV at the time in 1990. He broached the idea to the FA and the Football League because there was a disagreement. I'll finish on this: a disagreement between the Football League clubs and the FA. They were at loggerheads. He came up with an idea for ITV. We could give a TV package here, reform the league structure a little bit, and give some more and give money back to the game that I love. He's a football fan. Ended up BBC getting the highlights package for Match of the Day and Sky Sports getting the TV package. ITV getting nothing for a decade. They briefly had the Premier League highlights and the league and the Football League highlights. They lost all them, and they had the FA Cup for a brief period. They lost that as well. And he's now he was involved with the FA for a while. He was a football fan. He may have took a lot of heat for being in charge of the FA, but he's a football fan at heart. He will even admit there are structural problems with the FA. He's even said, "No, even when I was working at the FA, I was at loggerheads with the structures of the Premier League and the Football League. They felt they were above FA reproach. The FA didn't have enough say in controlling the leagues below." And yes, I will remember an esports video at some point. I will do some research into how much esports brings in. The whiteboard will be coming out. I'll have lots of numbers on the board and crazy things, and I will not have a clue what I'm talking about because it's esports, and I'll have to be learning on the job. I'll just put some points over. This is what I found out. This is how much esports is worth. This is how much sponsorship's worth. This is how much growth they're expecting. I'll do something like that. But yeah, thanks a lot. Greg Dyke. I have a bit of respect for Greg Dyke, but at the same time, he would admit that the Premier League and the Football League has gone out of control, and he helped set up what we have now. So he's part of the problem, but also part of the solution. And now Casey comes in right at the end as we're calling it a day. So I've really timed this well. Casey, I suggest you rewatch the live stream in full from the beginning because you've missed a hell of a lot, and we're ending it now because we've been going for 3 hours and 20 minutes. I apologise, Casey, but yeah, there is some ice hockey chat in there, and I go on a rant about rugby union and football and wrestling, and I rant about a lot of things, and I do swear a lot in this one, so it's kind of fun to watch if you like foul and abusive language and me having a rant. This is my rant live stream. I haven't ranted for a while. Anyway, see you later, guys. Really appreciate all your comments and views. Really love it. If you missed anything and you want to watch from the beginning, please do so. Place your comments in the actual comments section, and I will do my best to not read through them, and I will cover the esports video at some point this week. But there are other things going on outside of YouTube on a personal level that have proven to be more important. So bear that in mind, guys. There's a reason why I wasn't doing videos for a couple of days. There has been a bereavement of a close friend's member of his family. I've been helping him out, so bear with me if I'm away from YouTube for a few days at a time. I'm helping my mate's family out because they do need a bit of help right now, and that's where I've been all weekend, and hence why I look like a zombie because I haven't really slept for 4 days. I've been in an armchair for 4 days watching dogs, so I haven't been as available as I have been. So bear that in mind, guys. There is stuff going on. I try my best. Anyway, the hockey thing was welfare related and refereeing related a little bit. I ranted for about 2 hours. But no, I do discuss a few bits and pieces in there. Just watch it through. I don't remember what I've said. I've ranted a lot. But anyway, thank you very much, guys. Ta-ta. I will see you later. Thank you for all your comments you brought in. And I will see you guys soon.